Chapter 41. Kill to be a hero. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. Xia Linxian was anxious. This is not good. It is said that the diabolic sword takes a huge toll on the wielder's soul energy. Suyu will not last for long. For every person that Suyu killed, his face would get paler. So far, he had used the diabolic sword 3 times, the toll on his soul must have been unimaginable. However, there was only one objective in Suyu's mind. Kill. The 5th person, extinguished. The 6th person, extinguished. The onlookers gasped, and they were so frightened that words could not describe it. A mere level 4 had actually managed to kill 6 level 5 bodyguards consecutively. Just how frightening was the sun.in.law that the Duke of Xianyu had found. Among the 10 green-shirted bodyguards, only 4 of them were left. Among the 4 of them, 1 of them was at level 5 upper tier, while the other 3 were level 5 lower tier. However, Suyu's face was as pale as paper. He had started to feel great pain from overusing his soul. Then, he became unable to use the diabolic sword again. The 3 green-shirted bodyguards at level 5 lower tier firmly swallowed their saliva, but with fear in their mind. The face of the commander of the green-shirted bodyguard was filled with cold sweat. Attack. He exhausted his soul and is now unable to use the secret technique of the soul. The 3 bodyguards bit their teeth and launched their attack outrageously. Even though Suyu had exhausted his soul energy, he still had the energy to go all out. Purple Star Thunderbolt. As Suyu roared, Purple Thunderbolt wrapped around his fists and he launched his attack. The 7th person, extinguished. Taking advantage of the fact that he was stationary, Suyu's back was hit with an attack, causing him to vomit out a mouthful of blood. Purple Star Thunderbolt. While falling, the brave and heroic Suyu launched a counterattack. The 8th person, extinguished. The 9th bodyguard took advantage of Suyu's openings and struck his chest fiercely. Suyu suffered a horrendous injury, and he vomited out another mouthful of blood. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Suyu was like a trapped beast. Even in that hopeless situation, his instinct to kill was still very strong. The 9th person, extinguished. Die, you little bastard. The eyes of the last bodyguard, the level 5 upper tier commander, became scarlet and he launched a fierce attack. An explosive sound could be heard in the air. The power of the fierce and violet palm attack was many times stronger than that of someone at level 5 lower tier. A very strong vital energy could be felt within his palms. His attack then landed on Suyu's abdomen brazenly. Suyu vomited a mouthful of blood big enough to cover half of the sky. Among the attacks that he had received, that attack was the strongest. The injury that Suyu suffered was the most deadly compared to the rest. Suyu was sent flying heavily to the floor. His body rolled a few times and broke several wooden chairs before he stopped. His mouth was full of blood, he had broken 3 ribs and his body felt as though it was being torn apart. Boo-hoo, brother Suyu. Sienna was grief-stricken and her eyes were full of hatred. This was the first time that she, who was pure, felt hatred towards humans. Why must her father be under the assault of bad guys, and why must brother Suyu be besieged? While trembling, Suyu caressed her head. He then stood up unsteadily with his face covered with blood and revealed a smile with the intent of encouraging her. Sienna, stay strong. Don't cry. I will protect you. Is he a monster? How can he still be alive after that attack? The commander of the bodyguard started to tremble in fear. Normally, when a level 4 is hit by a level 5 lower tier once, he would be out cold. However, Suyu had already taken on at least 4 of these hits. Moreover, the last hit was very powerful, inflicted by a level 5 upper tier. Even so, Suyu was still not dead yet. Exactly how strong was Suyu's body? As the first prince looked at Su Yu's bloody face, his heart started to feel a thread of fear. Su Yu must not be left alive. Attack! Kill him! He is already at his limit. The eyes of the green-shirted commander shone brightly, bit his teeth and threw himself towards Su Yu. Kneel down now and accept your death. A very powerful attack was coming. Su Yu's expression was solemn. He protected Sienna with one hand, while he raised his other hand high up. In the sky, he revealed a mystical and unusual finger. That finger caused the air to boil and the wind to spring up. That finger also gave off a powerful vibe as though the mountains had collapsed, the earth had cracked and the rivers started to flow backwards. It was as though Su Yu had merged with nature, and his finger started to trace a mystical pattern. The heavenly finger. Su Yu came to realize the elderly man's picturesque scene. His cold eyes were filled with arrogance, and he struck his finger downwards. Suddenly, the level 5 upper-tier bodyguard was hit with an invisible attack. A huge cut appeared, so deep that the bone could be seen in his chest, caused blood to gush out from his wound. How? How can this be? With his eyes filled with surprise and dissatisfaction, the commander collapsed onto the ground. The first prince and the onlookers were all gasping with astonishment. The holy decree. It is actually the holy decree. The people who are rumored to be able to comprehend the holy decree are those who possess abilities to become the holy king. Can it be that the Duke of Xianyu's son.in.law is a holy decree comprehender? Wow! Prodigy of souls, the holy decree comprehender, the Duke of Xianyu's son.in.law has hidden them very deeply. Is this exceptional demon student going to die just like this? The first prince was astonished but also full of murderous intentions. Moreover, he regretted his recklessness to eliminate the Duke of Xianyu. Who would have guessed that his son.in.law was actually able to comprehend the holy decree? If one day Su Yu achieved the realm of the Holy King, even if he had taken the emperor's throne, his whole clan would definitely be killed. Su Yu could not be allowed to live. You traitor! How dare you! You shall not be left alive. Even with the frightening vibe of the level 5 peak first prince, it was still difficult to send a chill down Su Yu's spine. Fiery stamp. The level 5 peak first prince launched a one-shot sure kill attack. His palms were wrapped with boundless raging flames, giving off a very powerful and frightening vibe. The frightening vital energy spread across his whole body. With a momentum that could topple the mountains, overturn the seas and was impossible to block, the attack headed towards Su Yu. For that attack, Sienna was also in its range. Brother Su Yu, leave me alone and run for your life. Life was like a roller coaster. It was as if in one night, Sienna had grown up, her expression was full of grief and as she struggled, she lightly pushed Su Yu away. The first prince's target was the Xianyu prefecture and Su Yu was only caught in their crossfire. Sorry brother Su Yu, I cannot be your bride anymore. Although Sienna's face was full of tears, she tried to force a smile. However, it felt very cold and distressing. She turned her petite body around and used it to shield Su Yu. She outrageously blocked the first prince's one-shot sure kill attack. In Su Yu's eyes, Sienna's small and weak body gradually became engulfed by the raging flames. This scene with her smile and sorrowful face seemed so sad it was as though leaves were falling from the trees during late autumn, and it became their last farewell. No! Su Yu roared. His pupils immediately turned crystalline. Space-time manipulation. Su Yu yelled and his body entered a space with a faster time flow. The world outside of his space seemed to have frozen. The world froze at Sienna's last moment, right before she was completely engulfed by the raging flames, where her face had a sad expression, even though she was forcing a smile. Su Yu's silhouette was like electricity. In the eyes of the people outside his space, Su Yu's speed not only increased by 50%, it had increased to a level that defied common sense and he dashed toward Sienna. In imminent peril, Su Yu rushed to Sienna and embraced her. After which, he used his body to block the one-shot sure kill attack. If I die, you will not have a good life either. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly. He raised his finger high up to the sky and struck it downwards. The heavenly finger. Bang! When everyone else came back to their senses, they discovered that in that instant, Su Yu had turned into a shadow, used his body to shield Sienna and was fighting a death match against the first prince. The first prince was taken by surprise. He shrieked miserably and covered his face. Looking at him, at the right half of his face, starting from his eye all the way to chin, there was a cut so deep that the bone could be seen. Without a doubt, his right eye was crippled. His face was also completely disfigured. However, Su Yu was hit by the one-shot sure kill attack. The raging flames had burned through his abdomen, creating a hole with blood streaming down. Before that attack, Su Yu was already heavily injured. That attack left him barely conscious and on the verge of death. No. Brother Su Yu. Sienna was left dumbfounded. After which, she felt that Su Yu's life was about to end and her heart started to quiver. With a pure and innocent heart, that was the first time that she had felt a heart-wrenching pain. This pain was similar to when her mother had passed away, when she was filled with deep sorrow as though her soul had been controlled. No. Brother Su, no. I don't want you to die. Sienna covered Su Yu's abdomen, with her face full of tears and grief. Su Yu was on the verge of death. When he saw Sienna's face full of tears, he squeezed out his last bit of energy and caressed her head. Don't cry. My fiancée should not be crying. The onlookers were silent. The tragic battle and the last farewell before Su Yu died had caused their souls to quiver. Just like this, the royal family's fight for power was incredibly cruel. The first prince's face was in extreme pain and had completely triggered his fierce and cruel character. He roared repeatedly, I will kill you. With hatred in his eyes, the first prince dashed towards Su Yu to kill him. Su Yu. My eyes were not wrong to have chosen you as my son. Law. The Duke of Xianyu's eyes were filled with vigor and he laughed. After defeating Bai Qixiong with one hand, the Duke of Xianyu took out a bright white light. Looking at it, it seemed to be a token. However, it was actually an illusory body that was formed by the condensation of vital energy. The bright white light plunged into the space between Su Yu's eyebrows. When the white light dissipated, a token with the word holy imprinted on it appeared clearly on his forehead. The onlookers gasped with astonishment and blurted out, Holy Order. The token that deemed one eligible to participate in the holy meet. One can only participate in the holy meet if he has the order. It is rumored that anyone who carried this token would be under the protection of the Holy King. Before the holy meet ends, if anyone laid their hands on those who possessed the token, they would pay a heavy price for it. 30 years ago, there was an exceptional genius. The monarch of the royal family then was fearful of him and they secretly got rid of him. After some time, the Holy King found out about that incident and he became extremely angry. The monarch of the dynasty, and anyone who was related to him, were all eliminated and not a single one of them was left alive. The members of the royal family were actually the descendants of the Holy King. However, in order to maintain order, due to their strict rules, the Holy King actually killed his own descendants without any hesitation. From then on, no one else, or even the royal family, dared to plot anything against any geniuses that were taking part in the holy meet. As expected, the first prince was boiling with rage to kill Su Yu. However, that holy order had made his expression change to that of astonishment, causing him to freeze on his tracks and not move another step. If their battle happened at a deserted place, it would not matter if he killed Su Yu. However, all of the dynasty's most influential officials were on site witnessing the battle. If he were to kill Su Yu, it would be as good as offending the Holy King. Many years ago, the monarch of a generation was killed. Compared to that, what would happen to him, a mere prince? With his eyes full of fear, the first prince spoke to the Duke of Xianyu furiously, you. The only token to allow one to participate in the holy meat, you actually gave it to him. The Duke of Xianyu laughed loudly, Yu.er is my son. In law. For the safety of my daughter, he is willing to give up his life. It is just a mere token, what's wrong with giving it to him? It turned out that from the very start, the Duke of Xianyu had doubts regarding Su Yu. He was worried that Su Yu might not be faithful to his daughter, and hence did not give him the token. However, Su Yu was willing to sacrifice himself to save the Duke of Xianyu's daughter. This had completely won the trust of the Duke of Xianyu, and in imminent peril, the Duke of Xianyu gave this life-saving token to Su Yu as a present. As long as Su Yu had the token, the first prince would be afraid to lay his hands on Su Yu. Moreover, the token contained a kind of mysterious power that could heal Su Yu's injuries. Humph. It doesn't mean that I cannot kill him, it means I cannot kill your daughter. The first prince was filled with murderous intent and he outrageously dashed toward Sienna. Suddenly, a heavy and cold hum could be heard. The first prince spit out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backwards. His face was full of fear. If just a hum alone could fatally injure him, then just how strong was his attacker? As though he was a ghost, a wrinkled old man standing with his hands clasped behind his back appeared in front of Sienna. His eyes were cold and heartless. Kill her. You are not worthy. Level 7 of the martial path. Bai Qixiong's body started to tremble in fear, and he gasped. Chapter 42. Sorrow and Loss. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. The first prince's pupils shrunk and his expression sunk. How dare you, a martial artist? This is a matter between the royal family, scram at once. If not, it will be difficult for you to escape death in the vast and boundless land of Fenglin Empire. Even though someone of level 7 of the martial path was strong, it was still far from enough to go against the empire. Even though Xia Linxian was at level 7 of the martial path, he was afraid to interfere in their matter as he was extremely fearful of the empire. The old man's face started to shiver, and he laughed coldly and mockingly. Although I am not from the Fenglin Empire, what can a mere prince like you do to me? After saying that, the old man grabbed Su Yu and Sienna and stared at Bai Qixiong coldly. Still not getting out of my sight. With just a glance, Bai Qixiong's face turned pale. His heart skipped a beat and he stopped his attack subconsciously. The Duke of Xianyu retreated. He then expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Senior Qin, for coming to our rescue. That old man was Senior Qin. Senior Qin's pupils looked around at the surroundings. The power of someone at level 7 had sent a chill down the limbs of the people, making them afraid to take even half a step. Duke, let's take our leave. The Fenglin Empire can no longer accommodate you, Senior Qin sighed coldly. The Duke of Xianyu's expression was filled with sorrow. He had stayed in the Xianyu prefecture for many years, and it had become his native place. Yet, he was set up by a villain and he had no choice but to leave the empire and become a deserter. Reminiscing about his attachment to the Xianyu prefecture, the Duke of Xianyu left. He caught up with Senior Qin and embarked on his journey as a deserter. Seeing that the Duke of Xianyu was leaving with Senior Qin, the first prince's face was filled with malicious intent. While enduring the pain in his body, he roared, "Remain here." Bang! The first prince broke a pendant that was hidden on his neck into pieces with his palm. A frightening atmosphere majestically engulfed the palace from all directions. A lofty flaming shadow suddenly appeared behind the first prince. The shadow was fuzzy, as though it was formed by the condensation of vital energy. In addition, it was emitting an incredibly powerful suppressive power. Senior Qin's expression became grave. Level 8 of the martial path. This is not good. We have to leave quickly. The shadow was of someone of level 8 of the martial path and it was formed by the condensation of vital energy. Moreover, it had prepared a level 8 of the martial path's one-shot sure kill attack. Even if it was Senior Qin who was at level 7, he would die instantly. That pendant was the first prince's last treasure to defend himself, and it was extremely valuable with a one-time usage. You want to leave? It's too late. Attack. The first prince grinned hideously and was full of murderous intent. The omnipotent flaming shadow moved, and the frightening power of his attack, which had the ability to extinguish the lives of many people, engulfed the palace from all directions. Without exception, all the onlookers laid on the floor, unable to move. They were extremely frightened. Senior Qin's face revealed a grave expression. He then tried to escape from the palace. But how could he escape an attack from someone of level 8? Bang! A 10-zhang long knife, covered in flames, appeared from the flaming shadow. The air was burning and a violent, whimpering sound could be heard. The air current was circulating with 4 distinct strokes of fire combined with the wind, which caused the people to feel like they were being suffocated. Senior Qin vomited out a mouthful of blood. Before the flaming knife even attacked him, he had already suffered a fatal wound from the appearance of the flaming knife. Senior Qin forced a smile. In his mind, he knew that he was going to die. However, at that moment, the shadow of someone flew behind Senior Qin, and used his body to block the frightening knife. Senior Qin. I leave both Xian'er and Yu.er to you. The Duke of Xianyu's face was full of despair as he profoundly turned his head to look at Senior Qin. He could only do so much. Duke. Senior Qin was moved and he roared in astonishment. Leave now. As long as Xian'er and Yu.er are alive, I have no more regrets. The Duke of Xianyu laughed coldly. As Senior Duke could not bear to see the Duke of Xianyu giving up his life, he bit his teeth, took the 2 children and escaped. Su Yu was partially conscious. Seeing that the Duke of Xianyu left himself behind to block the one-shot sure kill attack in order to allow them to escape safely, Su Yu's heart was filled with indescribable sorrow. He uttered heart-wrenching cries. Why did it become like this? Su Yu. Please take care of Xian'er on my behalf. With a face that was overflowing with tears, the Duke of Xianyu gave a kind yet distant smile. That smile was his farewell. The next moment, he was engulfed by the boundless raging flames. That was the last scene Su Yu witnessed. The Duke of Xianyu, who Su Yu was greatly indebted to, as though the Duke of Xianyu was his father, had sacrificed himself to allow Su Yu and Xian'er to escape safely. No. Su Yu shouted with every ounce of energy he had left. A hatred which had never existed before reverberated in Su Yu's heart. That hatred was so deep it was as though his body was about to explode, as though it would destroy both the heaven and earth, as though it would destroy everything. First Prince. Su Yu shouted loudly with immeasurable hatred and deadly intent that could breach the sky. If I don't kill you, I, Su Yu, will forever never be a man. Even though the Duke of Xianyu had blocked a great portion of the raging flames, there was still a small portion that had managed to splash onto the back of Senior Qin. Senior Qin vomited a mouthful of blood and suffered a fatal wound in that instant. However, he took the momentum from the flames that had splashed onto his back and escaped from the Duke of Xianyu's palace. At lightning speed, he escaped from Xianyu Prefecture with the 2 children. As for Su Yu's oath, it echoed in the sky of the Duke of Xianyu's palace for a long time, refusing to dissipate. His hatred had penetrated heaven, burnt the mountains, rivers and earth, as though it had put an end to the world. Those who heard Su Yu's oath were shocked and they felt a chill down their spine. That oath was so persistent that it was frightening. The first prince's heart was beating extremely fast as an uneasy feeling had completely filled his heart in no time. As a prince with imperial power, it was quite rare for him to feel uneasy. The auditorium was a mess. The flaming shadow gradually dissipated. What was left behind was a deep groove that was 10 zhang long. Moreover, within the deep groove laid a middle-aged man who was at death's door. His right arm had turned into dust and was covered blood, so hideous that it was bone-chilling. His body's inner strength was delicate like silk and was about to extinguish completely. The Duke of Xianyu actually did not die. He had luckily survived an attack that would have otherwise killed Senior Qin. Third brother. What is the meaning of this? The first prince's eyes were filled with maliciousness as he glared at the third prince. During the imminent peril, the third prince had used his own amulet to protect the Duke of Xianyu. If not, the Duke of Xianyu would not have simply lost his right arm, instead, he would be burnt to ashes. The third prince remained unchanged like before. He laughed like the spring breeze and said with a warm voice, "Big brother, the objective of our trip is to escort the Duke of Xianyu back to the imperial capital. If we killed him here, how are we going to answer to the world? Unless you want to say that due to your indiscrimination, you slaughtered the Duke of Xianyu ruthlessly. If this causes the dukes in the other prefectures to be disturbed, which in turn cause the empire to be in a turmoil, how will Big Brother answer to the world? You." Even though the first prince was furious, deep down he knew that the third prince's words were logical. With mixed emotions, the first prince gazed at the third prince profoundly, turned his head around and shouted angrily, "The soldiers will be split between two roads. The first road will escort the Duke of Xianyu back to the capital, while the other road will pursue and capture the young princess of the Xianyu prefecture." The matter had finally been settled. The Duke of the dynasty had his right arm crippled, becoming disabled and reduced to a prisoner. From then on, the name of the Xianyu prefecture was expunged. However, the losses of the first prince were tragic. The second prince was beheaded. As for he himself, his right eye was damaged and his face was disfigured. The price the first prince paid to get rid of the Xianyu prefecture was too high. What's more was that the oath made by the Duke of Xianyu's son-in-law before he escaped had turned into a thorn which made the first prince's heart feel uneasy. If time could be turned back, the first prince would definitely not have laid his hands on the Xianyu prefecture as the price he had to pay was too tragic. The royal family took their leave, but before the third prince left the Duke of Xianyu's palace, he lightly sighed, "A duke of a dynasty who is loyal to the sovereign should not have been met with this kind of ending. I can only do so much to help you." As the onlookers left, Duke Qin and a number of influential officials followed the first prince. The influential officials had supported the first prince in taking the throne. It was natural that they would go back to the capital with the first prince. Halfway through the journey, the first prince summoned Duke Qin. "I heard that there was an incident between Su Yu and your son." The first prince's right side of his face was wrapped with bandages. As his right eye was in severe pain, his tone was quite cold. Su Yu was a person who set the world on fire, so the first prince naturally wanted to get information regarding him. To the first prince, finding out about Su Yu was an easy feat. Duke Qin dared not to cover up the truth. They were fighting over a woman. As he was talking, Duke Qin was filled with regret. If he knew that Su Yu was hiding something so deep and frightening such as being both the prodigy of souls and holy decree comprehender, he would have done anything to stop his son from fighting with Su Yu over a woman back then. However, it was too late for him to repent for his actions. "Then, I will leave the important task of getting rid of Su Yu to you," the first prince said with a harsh tone. Duke Qin's body started to tremble and his face turned pale. "Please have mercy on me, first prince. Su Yu is a holy seal-bearer. If it was discovered that it was the Qin's residents who laid hands on him, my entire clan, the old and young, will be fully executed." Duke Qin understood the fact that the first prince was worried that if he himself were to lay his hands on Su Yu, he would be condemned by the Holy King. As such, if the Qin family were to do it, and if the matter came to light one day, the Qin family would be the one to take the rap for it and the matter would be totally unrelated to the first prince. The first prince groaned coldly, "Do you think that Su Yu would let you get away scot-free in the future? I don't believe that Su Yu will forget your son's hatred about stealing his woman, as well as the murder of his father. If you do not get rid of him now, when his wings have not fully grown out yet, a disaster will definitely strike your family, causing everyone to be exterminated." Duke Qin became silent for a while. After some time, his eyes were gradually filled with anger. How did he not understand that? For this plan, we can only secretly assassinate him. The Qin's residence has cultivated a few professionals. It is now time for me to give you an important task. If this task is successfully completed without any problems, when I ascend the throne one day, I will recognize you for your great service. Having experienced Su Yu's frightening talents, the first prince was extremely fearful of him. I understand. Duke Qin's heart was hardened and he gradually made up his mind. After pausing for a moment, Duke Qin asked, then, what do I do with the woman with Su Yu? Do I kill her, or? The first prince gestured his hands in disapproval. Do not kill her, bring her up properly and she may prove to be of some use in the future. Duke Qin understood that he could not kill or touch her. He sighed from the bottom of his heart. His son's wedding ceremony with Jiang Xueqing would have to be delayed, at least until Su Yu was dead. Deep inside the dense forest in Twilight Mountains. With a pale face, Senior Qin carefully put down the two children. Xiener suffered a great trauma and had passed out a long time ago. Su Yu's body had been strengthened from the jade fire marrow, and he was also being healed by the effects of the Holy Order. His fatal injuries from the battle had already shown signs of recovery and the hole in his abdomen had stopped bleeding. The effects of the Holy Order were good, but your body is unique as well. Even though you had suffered many fatal injuries, those wounds have already started to recover by themselves. Senior Qin was amazed. Su Yu was idling and he did not want to say anything. The scene of the Duke of Xianyu right before his death was still floating in his mind and refused to dissipate. Hey! Feeling the misery in Su Yu's mind, Senior Qin sighed disappointedly, both of you rest here for a short while. I will look for some medicinal materials to treat your injuries. This place is very safe and no demonic beasts will attack us. After Senior Qin left, the cave became silent. Some time later, Xiener woke up from her coma. No. Father. Upon waking up, the image of her father right before he died flashed through her mind, causing her to let out a mournful scream. She, who was always laughing and singing, with a voice that was innocent and lively, was filled with sorrow and anxiety. A warm and big hand lightly patted her back. Chapter 43. The Holy Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio, Xian. Air. Don't cry. With a hoarse voice, Su Yu comforted Xiener. Brother Su Yu, father has. Xiener threw herself onto Su Yu and cried loudly as she hugged him. Su Yu's eyes were wet, and he said while sobbing, don't cry. If father knows about this in the netherworld and even sees you crying, he will be unable to rest in peace. Xiener used her small hands to rub her red and swollen eyes, trying her best not to cry. However, her efforts were useless as tears continued to flow. Father is gone, Xiener no longer has a father. This was the first time in her life that Xiener had ever felt loneliness, fear and helplessness in her heart. Su Yu embraced her with love and lightly caressed her head. Xiener, you still have me. I will always be by your side. She felt great warmth in her heart. Xiener raised her head and used her eyes, which seemed to have matured overnight, to carefully measure her fiancé's loyalty. He had a pair of firm eyes filled with warmth, composed and comforting, and a shocking, scabbed face. Xiener bit her lip, extended her hands and meticulously removed the scab. Every time she removed a piece of scab, her heart will hurt slightly more, and she would shed another tear. All the blood was shed for her sake. Xiener, you. Su Yu did not understand why, but he felt that Xiener had a new feeling that she never felt towards him before. In the past, Xiener had been willful and playful. Su Yu was probably a playmate who she was familiar with. After going through a big change in her life, she seemed to have become more mature. Brother Su Yu. Siener suddenly hugged Su Yu with all her strength, as though she was afraid that Su Yu would leave her the very next moment. With the death of her father, even though Su Yu was her fiancé for only one day, he was her only close relative left. Having felt Siener's petite body trembling, Su Yu patted her back lightly. At that moment, there was no need for words, Su Yu had already felt Siener's intentions. Both of them were embracing one another silently. After going through a big ordeal, both their hearts had gradually united with one another. After a long time, Siener finally stopped sobbing and her small head moved for a bit on Su Yu's chest. She then raised her head, and with a thread of embarrassment in her red and swollen eyes, she said, "I want to be brother Su Yu's bride, forever and ever." Su Yu bowed his head, tapped her forehead and with his heart full of love said, "You will forever be my bride." Siener's face turned red. Relieved, she leaned against Su Yu's chest. After she lost her father, she had managed to find another person who she could depend on. When Senior Qin returned with the medicinal materials and witnessed that scene, his expression became complex. He silently prepared a medicine to treat Su Yu's injuries. After which, Siener rushed ahead of Senior Qin to apply the medicine. Xioneer, who in the past only knew how to play around, was acting like a good wife and loving mother. She meticulously took care of Su Yu, her face full of satisfaction. After half a day, Su Yu had gotten plenty of rest. Senior Qin leisurely said, "Young princess and Su Yu, upon the last order of the Duke of Xianyu, I will bring both you out of the Fenglin Empire and we will head towards the Fenghuang Empire where the young princess mother is. Over there will be members of the young princess's mother's clan who can take good care of her. Let's prepare to leave now." The young princess's mother was actually someone from the Fenghuang Empire. Su Yu recalled that at the neck of the young princess, there was a 9-tailed seal of Fenghuang. He then understood the connection between the young princess and Fenghuang Empire. The first prince and his group of people had arrested the Duke of Xianyu for treason, and the arrest was made based on groundless accusations. The Duke of Xianyu's treason offense was just an excuse. The real reason he was arrested was due to his connections with other countries. Why did Su Yu and Qin Siener have to leave the Fenglin Empire and escape to another country? Su Yu's eyes were filled with coldness. "Senior Qin, you bring Siener to the Fenghuang Empire, I will stay. There needs to be someone to take revenge for the Duke of Xianyu. If Su Yu did not kill the first prince, he would never be a man." Senior Qin sighed, "Let me ask you, how are you going to take revenge? The first prince lives in the deepest part of the imperial palace and has several tens of thousands of strong subordinates. Are you going to be able to fight an endless stream of strong martial artists to reach him? The power of one martial artist alone is unable to compete with the whole of the Fenglin Empire. The first prince holds a very high position. If you see him as an enemy, it would mean seeing the Fenglin Empire as an enemy. Even if you are a strong martial artist of level 9, it would be difficult for you to fight against the whole empire." Senior Qin's words were sincere and meaningful. Su Yu's conviction remained unchanged. "It will never be too late for me to take revenge, even after 10 years. If I cannot take revenge the next day, what about 1 year later, 10 years later, or even when I am on death's door? There will surely come a day when I will get my revenge." Senior Qin was moved. He realized that Su Yu valued relationships and gratitude. Su Yu remembered the gratitude he had towards the Duke of Xianyu and was willing to repay him for his whole life. Senior Qin could not bear to see such an outstanding person be obsessed with revenge for his whole life, as it would be a waste. After some time, he sighed, "There is actually a way for you to take your revenge. However, the chances are very uncertain. Senior Qin, please advise me." Su Yu was moved. Senior Qin pointed to the holy seal which was in between Su Yu's eyebrows. "This is it." Su Yu did not understand. The holy order only gives one the right to participate in the holy meat. How will it deal a shock to the Fenglin Empire? The holy order cannot do it. However, what about the holy king? Senior Qin's eyes were filled with respect. Holy King. There was a well-known legend that the Holy King had decided to use his power to change the royal family of the Fenglin Empire. If it were him, it would be more than sufficient to deal a shock to Fenglin Empire. However, how would Su Yu obtain the help of the Holy King? There is actually another meaning behind you participating in the Holy Meet. The Holy Meet is a fight to determine who is worthy to become a sanctuary disciple. If you are able to fight your way up to the top 10, you will have a great chance of becoming a sanctuary disciple. What? Holy disciple. Su Yu was moved. The master of the sanctuary was the Holy King. If he became a holy disciple, wouldn't he have a chance to meet the Holy King face to face? When the Holy King agreed, Su Yu would have successfully taken his revenge. Moreover, if you are able to grab the first position in the Holy Meet, you will have the chance to get the Holy King to fulfill one of your wishes. There are no limitations to the wish. Senior Qin's eyes were shining. The implication behind his words was that Su Yu could wish for the Holy King to eliminate the first prince. Su Yu clenched his fists. That's good. In the Holy Meet, I, Su Yu, will attain the first position and exterminate the first prince. Senior Qin did not have any high hopes for Su Yu. He lightly shook his head. The Holy Meet will be held in 10 days. With your level of abilities, you might not even get into the top 30. In the past, Bai Qixiong, who was at level 6 lower tier of the martial path, could only harbor a grievance when he did not get into the top 10. As for Su Yu, it was still difficult for him to defeat someone of level 5 peak of the martial path. There was absolutely no chance of him getting the first position. Moreover, Senior Qin sighed sincerely. Moreover, with the talents that you displayed, the first prince would not allow you to live. If you stayed in the Fenglin Empire, there would be many people looking to kill you. Why don't you follow me to the Fenhuang Empire, where I can keep you safe for your lifetime? Su Yu became silent for a short while. However, his burning desire for revenge had not been extinguished. The debt of gratitude to my father is as weighty as a mountain, and he treated me as though I was his biological son. Let me ask you then, as his son, how can I not avenge my father? Su Yu clenched his fists. Sienna grabbed Su Yu's sleeve. Even though her eyes were filled with tears, she was firm and full of hatred. Brother Su Yu, let me stay with you. I also want to avenge my father. As Su Yu patted her small head, he lightly shook his head. No. Sienna, I alone am more than enough. Between the both of us, one of us has to stay alive. If not, we will disappoint father, especially since he sacrificed himself to save us. The trip would be fraught with grim possibilities. Letting Su Yu alone take the risk would be more than enough, and there was no need to drag Sienna down with him. No. I am brother Su Yu's bride and I will stay with you even if I were to die. Sienna was stubborn. She had already lost her father, she could not afford to lose Su Yu as well. With Su Yu's palm, he abruptly hit Sienna on her neck, causing her to fall towards his chest. Su Yu withdrew his palm. He leaned his head against her forehead with love and said with a soft voice, Sienna, please live on happily. After saying that, Su Yu left her with Senior Qin and expressed his thanks with a bow. Senior Qin, thank you for the trouble. Senior Qin's expression was complicated. He then sighed, with a son. In law like you, the Duke of Xinyu can rest in peace. Please look out for yourself. As for the young princess, I will bring her to the Fenhuang Empire. If you want to visit her one day, bring along this token and come to the Fenhuang Valley. Senior Qin threw him a phoenix-shaped token. There were still mixed feelings in Senior Qin's eyes. With signs of hesitation, he reminded Su Yu, however, if your cultivation base is not strong enough, do not come. You would only invite trouble for yourself. Su Yu was in awe. What kind of land was the Fenhuang Valley that Senior Qin had to go out of his way to warn him? Senior Qin carried the unconscious young princess and disappeared into the forest. Su Yu carefully kept his token and continued to recuperate from his injuries. Although his injuries were serious, with his strong body, the effects of the holy order and the medicinal herbs made by Senior Qin, he recovered quickly. After 2 days, most of Su Yu's injuries were healed. Suddenly, when he opened his eyes, he saw a bright and shiny light. He felt a very strong inner strength overflowing in all his limbs and bones, many times greater than that of a level 4 upper tier. As he practiced his fists, he could hear a crackling and rattling noise coming out from his body. This is indeed profiting from a misfortune. By suffering a few fatal injuries, the accumulation of the medical power of the jade fire marrow within my body has started to take effect, allowing my cultivation base to make a breakthrough to the next tier. When Su Yu felt the cultivation base of level 4 peak, he was overjoyed. As the holy meet was nearing, it was very important for his cultivation base to go up a tier. If I were to meet the first prince again under conditions where I must fight alone, I would have the power to fight. Su Yu's eyes were full of murderous intent. If Su Yu did not kill the first prince in his lifetime, he would be unable to die in peace. Su Yu's ears shivered a little as he heard a soft and peculiar noise. That noise did not belong to the animals in the forest. Rather, it belonged to humans who were moving very quickly. With a grave expression, Su Yu started to look around. He then silently left the cave and activated Shadow Cloud. As though he were the shadow of white clouds, Su Yu abruptly leaped to a location about 1 mile away from the cave and hid himself in a crack behind a rock. His pupils gradually turned crystalline and with his strong eyesight, he could observe the cave, which was 1 mile away, clearly. A patch of grass, a tree, an insect and a bird, they all seemed as though they were right in front of Su Yu. 3 middle-aged men dressed like hunters were sneakily getting closer to the cave. They stationed themselves at a location 200 meters away from a thick clump of grass, not moving a slight bit. The leading middle-aged man had a scar between his eyebrows and he had attained a frightening level 5 peak. To his sides were 2 young men who were at level 5 upper tier. When combined, they could wipe out anyone who was below level 6. Su Yu laughed coldly. How could strong level 5 martial artists be satisfied with being hunters? Without question, they were definitely sent by the first prince to assassinate Su Yu. A few days ago, Senior Qin had escaped hurriedly and it was hard to avoid leaving behind any traces. Hence, 2 days was more than enough for the pursuing troops to locate them. Since Su Yu had the holy seal on his head, even if the first prince had the guts, he would not kill Su Yu openly. By secretly assassinating Su Yu, the first prince would be able to resolve the matter once and for all. Bodyguard Chen, what should we do now? The hunters on the sides were very experienced and vicious, using their eyes to transmit the message to the leading middle-aged man. Bodyguard Chen, who was at level 5 peak, was indeed the leader of the group. The 3 of them were actually Duke Qin's escorts when he attended the marriage ceremony of the Duke of Xianyu's daughter. 2 days ago, they were secretly ordered to assassinate Su Yu. Initially, their faces turned pale with fright. However, when Duke Qin promised them something that they could not resist, they decided to take a risk and assassinate Su Yu. They knew that their lives were at risk. If Su Yu did not die, they would die. Anyone who dared to lay his hands on a holy seal bearer would be unable to escape death. Bodyguard Chen's scar between his eyebrows wriggled and his ferocious eyes started to examine the surroundings. There are no animals near the vicinity of this cave, meaning that someone's aura is inside the cave and the wild beasts dared not to approach it. The footprints near the entrance are still fresh, meaning that there was still someone here a short time ago. I deduce that they are either still in the cave, or they just recently left. Bodyguard Chen had extensive experience. By examining the surroundings once, he was able to come up with a deduction that was close to the truth. The both of you will secretly watch the cave and I will return to inform Lord Bai Qixiong. Bodyguard Chen passed the message softly. Like a green snake in the grass, he moved meticulously and returned back using the path he came from. With Senior Qin, who was at level 7 of the martial path, relying on bodyguard Chen and the 2 other bodyguards, who were at level 5 upper tier, would be insufficient to kill Su Yu. After ensuring that everything had gone well, the first prince would secretly order Bai Qixiong to support from the sidelines with a gift he had given Bai Qixiong. The treasure could release an attack from someone of level 7 peak of the martial path. Bai Qixiong would even kill Senior Qin if he needed to. As for the 2 strong martial artists at level 5 upper tier, they stayed behind to watch the cave. Both of them concentrated their attention on the cave and were like a cheetah's, lying dormant. Their eyes were sharp and full of vigor, not moving the slightest bit. A few minutes passed. Suddenly, their situation changed. The air contained a cold current in cylindrical form. Suddenly, a sharp iron arrow pierced through the mist in the forest and headed straight for them. Chapter 44. Fleeing 1,000 miles away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio, a surprise attack. The 2 bodyguards had amazing hearing abilities. They turned around and gasped in astonishment. Behind them, about 100 meters away, a young man wearing a red robe had strangely appeared, although he had been there for quite some time. He wore a jade crown over his black hair and was as handsome as a fairy. He stood proudly on the old trees, overlooking the 2 bodyguards. His cold, vast and starry eyes, which seemed to shine forever like the stars in the sky, were filled with murderous intent. His hands were holding a scarlet bow. In imminent peril, the hunter to the left took out a knife from his waist and used its blade to block the arrow. It's Su Yu. The 2 hunters' faces turned pale with fright. They looked at one another and outflanked Su Yu on both sides simultaneously. Be careful, it is said that he is a holy decree comprehender. We will split up and launch a pincer attack on him, not giving him a chance to make his move. Su Yu's cold eyes were full of murderous intent. His red shirt was fluttering and his hair was in a frenzied dance. He jumped down from the tree and touched the ground lightly, as if he was a goose feather was falling from a tree. The 2 hunters launched a surprise attack from Su Yu's left and right with overwhelming deadly intent. Su Yu stood calmly at his position. He was absolutely still and had no intentions of escaping. When the 2 hunters came within 10 zhang of his radius, Su Yu slowly opened his dark and deep eyes. Diabolic sword. Su Yu drew an invisible sword which glittered in the dark. The invisible sword passed through the void, cutting the left hunter's head. The hunter held his head in suffering and screamed, causing a mournful shriek to echo in the mountainous forest. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Su Yu took huge strides. His silhouette moved as fast as a powerful current, resulting in a series of fragmented shadows moving towards the left hunter's body. The heavenly finger. Su Yu raised his finger up high, and as though his body had become one with nature, he struck his finger downwards. As the left hunter suffered pain in his soul, he lost his will to defend himself. With Su Yu's attack, a bloody cut opened up in his chest. With a miserable scream, the left hunter's chest exploded, causing him to die. As for the remaining strong martial artist on the right, his pupils shrunk abruptly and his heart was beating violently. He bit his teeth, turned around and started to flee. It was impossible for him to kill Su Yu by himself, and if he tried, he might end up being suppressed instead. Humph. Su Yu did not go after him. After all, Shadow Cloud was a basic level cultivation technique. Even though it had reached stage 3 top class, it could only increase his speed to match someone at level 4 peak, making it impossible for Su Yu to catch up to the hunter. What was more crucial to Su Yu was that there were still other people in the forest. He needed to withdraw quickly to prevent himself from being surrounded by strong martial artists. He turned his body around and plundered the left hunter's belongings. He took tails of silver, food and a coat which was made from the skin of wild beasts. When the catastrophe struck at the Duke of Xianyu's palace, Su Yu and Senior Qin escaped hurriedly. Therefore, they did not have a single penny on them. After roughly confirming the direction of the imperial capital, Su Yu left, passing through the forest quickly, making a beeline for the imperial capital. His only chance for revenge was to get to the imperial capital and participate in the holy meet. After half a day, bodyguard Chen and the escaped hunter, accompanied by a masked man, returned to the battle site where Su Yu killed the hunter. Although that man's face could not be seen clearly, one could tell that his figure belonged to Bai Qixing, the strong and frightening martial artist who was at level 6 peak. Elder, taels of silver, food and his clothing had been plundered. Once Su Yu enters the city in disguise as himself, it will be difficult to catch him. Bodyguard Chen had a grave expression. Killing a holy seal bearer was considered a heinous crime. As long as Su Yu continued to live, he would continue to feel uneasy as well. You try to act smart. Bai Qixing sneered. How could someone not prepare for tracking someone in the mountainous forest? Bai Qixing had brought a hound with him. He had the hound sniff the dead body so that it would be familiar with its scent. By stealing the clothes off the dead man, Su Yu had brought on his own destruction. The hound walked around the area for a while and confirmed the direction that Su Yu had headed. It was towards the imperial capital. Chase him. He has not gotten too far. With their speed equivalent to someone of level 5 peak, it would be difficult for Su Yu to escape his death. With the help of the hound, they kept close to one another and chased continuously. After escaping and following the scent for one day, both sides had been running for miles in the forest. Once they caught up to Su Yu, with Bai Qixing's frightening abilities, Su Yu would be unable to resist and would be killed on the spot. After 2 days, both sides were still escaping and following respectively. As the hound's barking became more distinct, it indicated that they were getting closer to Su Yu. Elder, Su Yu's escape route is very complicated. He changed his direction many times, like it had changed from fleeing towards the imperial capital to fleeing towards the Twilight Mountains, as though he did not plan out his escape route. After giving chase for 2.5 days, bodyguard Chen raised his suspicions. Bai Qixing did not fully understand Su Yu's actions. Since Su Yu knew that he was a target for assassination, he should head towards a population city. With many people watching them, Bai Qixing would be unable to act rashly. However, for him to escape into a remote and barren mountainous forest, where it was hard to find even a trace of humans, it implied that Su Yu was causing his own downfall. Could it be that he wants to hide within the mountainous forest? Bai Qixing suspected. Finally, after half a day, the hound stopped, dashed into a big stone cave and started to bark crazily. Bai Qixing and bodyguard Chen's expressions turned to happiness. After 2.5 days, they had finally caught up to Su Yu. A muffled roar could be heard from the cave. A tall black shadow dashed out of the cave and threw itself towards Bai Qixing and bodyguard Chen. It was a huge black bear, as tall as a normal person. Humph. You are asking for death. Bodyguard Chen took out a long knife from his waist and cut off the black bear's head. The black bear collapsed onto the floor with a loud crash. Bai Qixing stared at the belly of the black bear, and his eyes turned cold. What a crafty kid. Bodyguard Chen's pupils shrunk and he turned serious. So that's why. He is indeed crafty. Tied on the black bear's belly was a coat made from the skin of wild beasts. It was the dead hunter's coat. They had thought that after Su Yu plundered taels of silver and food, he also took the hunter's coat with him to change out of his bright red robe, so that he could hide himself within the mountainous forest or disguise himself. However, who would have expected him to be so crafty? He deliberately took the hunter's coat with him and tied it to the belly of the black bear, predicting that Bai Qixing and bodyguard Chen would rely on a hound's nose to track him. By tying the hunter's coat to the belly of the black bear, it became frightened and escaped deep into Twilight Mountains. That had completely misled Bai Qixing and bodyguard Chen, leading them in the opposite direction. It seemed that from the very start, Suyu had drafted out that plan to use as a safety precaution. To think that we have been tricked by the kid. Bai Qi was furious. He turned around and started to walk in the opposite direction. Bodyguard Chen followed closely behind him. He then said with fear and anxiety, "Elder, what should we do now? We have lost him. In the vast and boundless mountainous forest, how would they locate Suyu?" Bai Qixiong's eyes turned cold and he started to look around in all directions. Finally, he looked towards the direction of the imperial capital. "Since he led us deep into the Twilight Mountains, then we will chase him in the opposite direction." Bodyguard Chen agreed. After 7 days, they stopped in front of a desert with a small stream. There was a pile of cold firewood that had been extinguished a long time ago lying beside the stream. There were also bits and pieces of fish bones scattered around. This firewood was extinguished a day ago. It is very rare to come across any humans here, hunters do not even come here. There is a high possibility that it was Suyu, deduced Bodyguard Chen after he twisted the remnant of the firewood and sniffed it. Bai Qixiong's eyes were cold. "Good. With our speed, we can catch up to him in half a day." Bodyguard Chen was still suspicious. "Elder, if I do not remember wrongly, one can reach the imperial capital after passing through a mountain in front. If we do not intercept him at the mountain, then it will be difficult for us to lay our hands on him again." There were many eyes in the imperial capital, and the number of strong martial artists there were comparable to the number of clouds in the sky. Even if Bai Qixiong and Bodyguard Chen were to take action in the middle of the quiet night, there was a high chance that they would be caught and exposed. "Chase him." Feeling that the time was tight, Bai Qixiong frowned and continued to give chase. Suyu was extremely exhausted. During those 10 days, other than eating, the rest of the time was spent trying to escape. He had always used eating time to regain his energy. However, he was still short of energy and was extremely exhausted. When he thought about the assassins chasing after him, Suyu did not dare to relax the slightest bit. After climbing up to the peak of a mountain with some difficulty, Suyu looked at his surroundings. He could see thick picturesque forests and flatlands in the distance. The land was covered with rivers and green vegetation with a surprisingly refreshing breeze. In the distance, there was a majestic and huge city. It was covered by mist and it looked as though a huge monster had appeared. The imperial capital. Suyu was delighted. He had been walking towards the direction of the imperial capital and after 10 days, he finally reached his destination. Thankfully, the border between the Xianyu prefecture and the imperial capital was not very far. Since the Xianyu prefecture was as big as all of China, if Su Yu wanted to cut across it, it would require many months of traveling. With his destination right in front of him, Su Yu's heart felt relaxed but his body's fatigue had started to take its toll on him. He was very exhausted, to the point that he could collapse at any moment. He then pinched a part of his leg to make himself feel the pain, causing him to feel slightly more awake. Before he descended from the mountain, Suyu hid himself and looked back to check out the situation of his pursuers. Initially, he was just doing a random check. However, as his eyes searched, the sight made his heart beat violently. Bodyguard Chen and a masked young man were approaching quickly. Although they were 2 miles away, to Suyu, it was as if they were right in front of him. Bai Qixiong used a mask to cover his face. However, even without the mask, Suyu could still recognize him even if he turned to dust. 2 miles was a relatively short distance and they would chase up in a few minutes. Without hesitation, Suyu descended the mountain wildly and ran towards the flatland. As he descended the mountain, he used his pupils to scan the area to see if there were any places that he could hide himself in. Suddenly, he found that at the shore of the big river, there was a group of people camping. There were dozens of people split into about 7 or 8 tents. His eyes shone and Suyu quickly descended from the mountain. After 2 minutes, Suyu turned his head and looked behind him. He saw Bai Qixiong and Bodyguard Chen climbing up to the peak of the mountain. He could not wait anymore. Before he was discovered, Suyu chose to blend in with the people and secretly enter the tent that was closest to the river. At that moment, Bai Qixiong and bodyguard Chen arrived at the peak of the mountain. Their eyesight was not as strong as Suyu. Hence, they did not discover their target hiding inside the tent. Using the small gaps in the tent, Suyu observed the expression of them, about 2 miles away. After confirming that their expressions were not unusual, he heaved a sigh of relief. Feeling exhausted after running for so long, Suyu sat down on the floor and meticulously examined the tent. The tent was set up temporarily. It was simple and crude with a red bed sheet red. There was a faint fragrance lingering in the tent, giving off the impression that the tent belonged to women. Indeed, that tent belonged to the females. I will stay here for a while. After Bai Qixiong and his man are far away, I will leaving immediately. There were many people in the camp and Suyu believed that Bai Qixiong would not act rashly. If not, once the information spread around, not even heaven or earth would be able to save him. After running for so many days, Suyu could finally catch his breath for a minute. However, it was difficult for him to resist his body's excessive fatigue. Feeling muddle-headed, Suyu climbed on the embroidered bed and went under the blanket. His head felt heavy and he fell asleep straight away. Outside the tent, there was a graceful, beautiful and innocent lady. Her bright eyes were like water. She was refined, as though she did not belong to the human population. Instead, she was like a celestial beauty who had descended to this world. She had a pretty snow-white face, which was peaceful and indifferent to fame or gain. She had a pair of clear eyes that were filled with worries that could not be dispelled easily. Are you still worrying about Qin Xianer and Suyu? Xia Linxian sighed, as he could no longer take the unpleasant look on his daughter's face. The huge change in the Xianyu prefecture had spread across the 13 other prefectures within 10 days. The Duke of Xianyu was captured while his daughter and son-in-law escaped. In the midst of it, Suyu had become a holy seal-bearer. The empire could not go after him for the time being. However, Qin Xianer was wanted by the empire and no one knew whether she was dead or alive. Xia Jingyu and Qin Xianer had been best friends since they were young. They were so close that they were like sisters. As for Suyu, he was Xia Jingyu's close friend. Xia Jingyu had lost 2 of her best friends. How could she not be worried? Xia Jingyu looked back and forced a smile. The Duke of Xianyu had a premonition a long time ago and made arrangements for someone strong to help them escape. Thinking about it, there shouldn't be too many obstacles for them and you do not need to worry too much. Xia Linxian comforted her, no news means good news. Perhaps they already left the Fenglin Empire and are now somewhere far away from the country. They left the country. Xia Jingyu felt delighted yet distressed. Her heart felt empty, and tears began to well up in her eyes. She may not get to see Xianer and Suyu for the rest of her life. Are both of them doing well where they are? Feeling miserable, Xia Jingyu tried to cover up her tears. Father, I will go back to my room to rest. Xia Linxian said with love, yes, the sky is dark now. Take a good rest and tomorrow, we will enter the imperial capital. Yes, Xia Jingyu hung her head and entered the tent. Her morale was low, and she walked towards her bed. With the remaining light from the sky, she found that there was something unusual on her bed. When she looked at it, she found that there was someone sleeping there. She could not help but feel angry and embarrassed. Who was bold enough to sleep on her bed? Chapter 45. Sacrificing oneself to save someone else. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. Xia Jingyu was furious and embarrassed. She used her jade-like hands and lifted the blanket. There was someone who looked like a beggar, with ragged clothes and a shriveled body. However, when she saw the person's face, Xia Jingyu's eyes froze. Within her dense and snow-like eyes were feelings of astonishment, disbelief and confusion. Didn't Suyu escape from the Fomlin Empire? Why was he outside the imperial palace and on my bed? After quite some time, Xia Jingyu walked closer to her bed and confirmed that she was not seeing things. Suyu was wearing his bridegroom's suit from weeks ago. It's him. It's really him. Xia Jingyu breathed heavily, she could not believe her eyes. She could not contain the happiness in her heart. Her bleak look suddenly turned to that of vigor and cheerfulness. She turned her body and was about to go outside. Father, Suyu. Russell Suyu was half awake, Xia Jingyu's movements towards him had caused him to wake up slightly. Although his mind felt heavy, his train of thought was still there. He subconsciously grabbed Xia Jingyu's waist and his lips started to move. No. Danger. Someone is chasing me and they plan to kill me. After a few words, Suyu went back into deep sleep. Xia Jingyu was shocked. Suyu was a holy seal bearer, who would dare to kill him? She instantly understood the meaning behind Suyu's words. There were people who wanted to kill him, and if she revealed his whereabouts, his pursuers might kill their entire group to keep them quiet. If they were in the Xianyu prefecture, Xia Jingyu would not be worried. Her father was powerful and considered a legend in the Xianyu prefecture. However, they were near the imperial capital, where the number of strong martial artists was comparable to the number of clouds in the sky. Hence, it was difficult to anticipate how strong his pursuers were. She could not let anyone find out about Suyu's location. A disaster would occur if the information was revealed. Xia Linxian had not gotten far from her daughter's tent. Upon hearing her daughter's strange voice, he hurriedly headed towards her. What happened? Xia Jingyu tried to cover up. Oh, it's nothing. I was just in low spirits. Father, please don't come in, I have removed my clothes. Xia Linxian, who had stretched out his hand to lift up the entrance of the tent, withdrew his hand. He could not help but sigh lightly. If nothing is wrong, then all is good. Heaven helps the worthy, you need not worry about Suyu. I know, Father. Xia Jingyu's heart was beating rapidly and her face was red like the evening glow. Hearing that her father's footsteps were far away, she heaved a sigh of relief. As she turned back and stared at Suyu's face in deep sleep, indescribable happiness filled her heart and tears welled up in her eyes. Xia Jingyu whispered with a trembling voice, I thought that you had died. I did not expect myself to be able to see you again. A tear rolled down her cheek silently. As she stared at Suyu, Xia Jingyu's heart was peaceful, warm and delighted. It was just like that day, amidst the pear blossom and the moonlight, Suyu had held her hands and helped her comprehend the holy decree, where she was in another realm, galloping in the vast and boundless nature. But in reality, she was just leaning against his firm and steady chest. Even after a long time, she still could not forget the feeling of his chest, it was engraved in her heart. Even if many years had passed and Xia Jingyu had forgotten about heaven and earth, she would not forget the light from the full moon, the courtyard full of pear blossoms and the feelings she felt on his chest that night. After staring blankly for some time, Xia Jingyu realized that she had to prepare food and water for Suyu. When she stood up, she realized that Suyu was holding onto her waist tightly and refusing to let go. Her smooth lips revealed a soft smile. Xia Jingyu squatted at the edge of the bed and quietly stayed by his side. Outside the tent, Bai Qixiong and bodyguard Chen had serious expressions on their faces. What a coincidence! The Martial Arts Training Institute in the Xianyu Prefecture is escorting the 10 demon students to the imperial capital to take part in the holy assessment. In the 13 prefectures, every training institute had the ability to send 10 of their strongest martial artists of the current generation to enter the imperial capital and participate in the holy meet. That meant that among the crowd, there were 10 holy seal bearers. Elder, it is not difficult to check if Suyu is among the crowd. What will be difficult is deciding what to do if we do find him there. As bodyguard Chen's method of doing things was shrewd and ruthless, he looked far ahead. If he is not among the crowd, then all is good. We would just apologize to them. With the both of us, the Martial Arts Training Institute might not make things difficult. The bigger question is that if Su Yu is really among them, what should we do? If we take action, then it is impossible for them, especially Xia Linxian, to not notice us. However, if we do not take action now, then Su Yu will follow them into the imperial capital tomorrow, making it even harder for us to take action. Bai Qi muttered to himself for some time and his eyes turned cold. What else is there to do? We will kill all of them. It is considered killing if we kill one or a group of holy seal bearers. With the jade pendant that the first prince gave me as a present, we can kill the whole group of them. Bodyguard Chen gasped. What a cruel and ruthless bodyguard the first prince had. Bodyguard Chen and Bai Qi were like puppets. Naturally, both of them were at someone's bidding and were utterly obedient. After some time, Bai Qi removed his mask, revealed his real identity and showed himself at the camp with bodyguard Chen. With the appearance of two strong martial artists, of levels 5 and 6, an uproar at the camp occurred immediately. Xia Linxian and Yi Xian immediately came to the scene. Xia Linchuan's eyebrows wrinkled. Bodyguard Chen was not well known, so Xia Linxian did not recognize him. As for Bai Qi, on the day the Duke of Xianyu was captured, he was clearly there as someone with the ability of level 6 peak of the martial path. How could Xia Linxian not recognize him? Bai Qi, what do you intend to do by intruding upon my camp? Can it be that the first prince is plotting a rebellion against the state? Xia Linxian was unusually indignant against the Duke of Xianyu's encounter. His whole life, the Duke of Xianyu had been loyal to the sovereign, devoted to his country and always had a good reputation. However, he did not expect himself to get caught in the fight for imperial power, which caused deep trouble for him. The first prince's lackey had shown up at their camp. How was it possible for them to treat the first prince's lackey with a good attitude? Bai Qi said coldly, I have received orders to capture the young princess. Moreover, we also received a secret tip that the training institute has been harboring her. I want to do a search of this area. Housemaster Xia, I suggest you let us through. Qin Xiener was a criminal wanted by the Fenglin Empire. Anyone who harbored her would be punished, including Xia Linxian. Bai Qi, have you forgotten the origins of the Martial Arts Training Institute? Xia Linchuan's eyes gradually turned cold. The Martial Arts Training Institute was a subdivision of the sanctuary. In theory, the royal family did not have jurisdiction over it. Bai Qi quietly took out a jade pendant which contained a level 7 peak attack. Xia Linchuan's pupils shrunk, he was shocked. If Bai Qi released the power of the jade pendant, everyone in the camp would be annihilated instantly, including Xia Linxian. Housemaster Xia, something strange is going on, Yi Xian whispered to Xia Linxian. Even though Bai Qi knows that we are a subdivision of the sanctuary, he still dares to threaten us. I think he really has the intention to annihilate all of us. Xia Linxian nodded. He had also noticed that things were unusual, as Bai Qi was too gutsy. After pondering for some time, Xia Linxian said coldly, Bai Qi, I hope you understand what you are doing. Finally, Xia Linxian chose to compromise. It was fine if he died alone. However, he could not let the training institute's 10 demon students in the tents die as victims of injustice. He slowly opened up a path for the both of them. As Xia Linxian had never once hit Qin Xiener, he had a clear conscience and was naturally unafraid of the search. Bai Qi and bodyguard Chen worked together and thoroughly searched every tent one by one to ensure that there were no mistakes or omissions. This continued until right before they reached the last tent. Both of their expressions turned gloomy. Could it be that Su Yu did not blend in with them? Did he change his direction and escape to another city? As Bai Qi was about to lift open the entrance of the last tent, Xia Linxian extended his hand and stopped him. This is a tent belonging to a lady. She retired for the day and I will not allow you to infringe upon her. Bodyguard Chen's eyes became narrow and Bai Qi became vigilant. Could it be that Suyu was inside the tent? Bai Qi held the jade pendant on his chest tightly, ready to break at any moment and kill everyone, including Suyu, on the spot. For some time, Xia Jingyu had been hearing the noises that were outside her tent, causing her heart to beat violently. Could it be that Suyu's pursuers were outside? For her father to be unable to obstruct them, Suyu's pursuers must be extremely strong. No. She could not let anyone find out about Suyu's existence. Not only would she be in danger, the rest of the group would be in danger as well. However, the tent was simple and crude, allowing anyone to see everything clearly with one glance. There was no place to hide a person. Hearing footsteps approaching her tent quickly, Xia Jingyu's heart was full of anxiety. Suddenly, her face turned slightly red as though it was a red lotus after the rain had stopped, which was beautiful and elegant. With tears in her eyes, Xia Jingyu lifted the blanket and lay down on the bed. To prevent any traces of Suyu being found, Xia Jingyu turned her body towards him to block him. After which, she covered herself properly with the blanket. Looking at it, under the blanket, there was a fairy sleeping on the bed. Russell at that moment, a nervous Bai Qi lifted up the entrance of the tent. However, what he saw was the back of a sleeping lady. A disappointed expression overflowed from his eyes. However, a thought popped in his head. Could it be that Suyu was on the bed? However, his thought disappeared with a flash. If she sacrificed herself for a man, then she would no longer be innocent. From the information that they had, Xia Jingyu and Suyu were close to one another. However, they were not close enough for Xia Jingyu to sacrifice her innocence to save him. Bodyguard Chen looked inside the tent thoroughly and shook his head. The Martial Arts Training Institute had not hit Suyu. From the looks of it, there was a high chance that Suyu had changed his direction halfway through while he was escaping. Bodyguard Chen and Bai Qi looked at one another, and under the furious eyes of Xia Linxian, they left angrily. Xia Linxian and Yi Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. When Bodyguard Chen and Bai Qi were checking Xia Jingyu's tent, Bai Qi was clearly emitting a strong murderous intent which was directed at everyone in the camp. Xia Linxian and Yi Xian were afraid that something might happen. The activities happening outside the tent had finally caused Suyu, who was in a deep sleep, to wake up a little. As he opened his eyes half-consciously, he could see a lady that was as beautiful as a fairy. She was familiar, exceptionally beautiful and extremely popular. However, the fairy's eyes were filled with tears. Her face was slightly red due to her shyness and feeling the pain from knowing that she had destroyed her own innocence. Senior Xia. Suyu was startled, as though he had been in a dream. It was clear that as he was escaping from his pursuers, he became unconscious in a tent. Why was it that when he woke up, he saw was Xia Jingyu hugging him with tears in her eyes? Hearing a sound, Xia Jingyu realized that Suyu had regained conscious and her face turned completely red. You do not look. Xia Jingyu said softly with her face full of tears, like pear blossom being carried by the rain, which could attract the love of many people. It's all right now. Xia Jingyu wore her clothes properly. Her black hair was slightly messy. Senior Xia, what happened? Why did you? Suyu was still greatly exhausted. However, he endured his sleepiness and asked Xia Jingyu with an uneasy feeling in his heart. Xia Jingyu's clear eyes were calm and she lightly shook her head. Bai Qi came by just now. In order to keep you safe, I had to use that expedient measure. You need not take it to heart. Suyu was a smooth and slick person. From Xia Jingyu's words, he understood the whole process. Suyu's heart trembled violently and he looked at Xia Jingyu with low spirits. No need to take it to heart. How was it possible for him to not take it to heart? In order to protect him, Xia Jingyu, a maiden, actually sacrificed her innocence. To a lady, sacrificing her own innocence was a very serious matter, which was clear by the tears in her eyes. In the Shenhua continent, there were strict rules of etiquette. In giving and receiving, man and woman must not touch one another. These rules were a lot stricter compared to Earth. To catch Su Yu, who destroyed his daughter's innocence, the Duke of Xianyu ordered a search of the whole city without hesitation and made a huge fuss out of it. Indeed, it could be clearly seen that the people in his world regarded chastity very highly. Moreover, Xia Jingyu was noble and extremely innocent. Whatever happened on that day might cause Xia Jingyu to forever experience the humiliation of being sullied. Chapter 46. Holy Crown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. When the demon students in the Martial Arts Training Institute found out how Suyu escaped from Bai Qixiong and bodyguard Chen, Xia Jingyu's reputation would be destroyed instantly. Xia Jingyu was noble and extremely innocent. In order to remain innocent, she would not even allow Feng Qingzhou to touch her, even if she had to commit suicide. Yet she willingly used her jade-like body to hug Su Yu. Senior. Xia. Su Yu was normally as calm as nature. However, his mind turned blank. In his previous life, if he had any misunderstandings with a woman, he could use sweet words to make them happy and use the opportunity to shake them off. However, he could not do that to Xia Jingyu, as she sacrificed her innocence to save him. If he did not have Qin Xiener as his fiancée, he would have been brave and taken responsibility for Xia Jingyu. However, Qin Xiener was already his fiancée. Qin Xiener had lost her father and could not afford to lose her only fiancé. Xia Jingyu wiped her red and swollen eyes. On her snow-like skin, there were still remnants of the last evening light, which was dim like an autumn lotus in a pool during winter, full of charm and cold at the same time. No need to take it to heart. It was just an expedient measure to save Su Yu. Xia Jingyu repeated those lines in her heart, forcing herself to not think of the future. At that moment, footsteps could be heard from the outside. Yu.er, can father enter? Xia Jingyu's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She looked at Su Yu with a complicated look and said softly and helplessly, "Yes, I have woken up already." What she had to face, she would face eventually. It was impossible for her to hide the fact that Su Yu was in the tent. Xia Linxian was worried that his daughter was frightened and went inside the tent in a rush. However, what he saw was a man with a shriveled face, who looked like a beggar, sitting on her daughter's bed. As Xia Jingyu's father, he felt like he had been struck by lightning. Looking at him, he realized the boy was a young man with a very familiar face. Su Yu. Xia Linxian was surprised once again. Hadn't he been rescued by Senior Qin and gone somewhere far away from the Fenglin Empire? Why was he there? However, he thought of another question that made him furious. If her daughter was sleeping on the bed naked, did that mean that Su Yu was with her on the bed? His daughter was noble and innocent. Xia Linxian strongly believed that she would not do anything that would bring dishonor to her family. Without a doubt, in order to protect Su Yu, Xia Jingyu pretended that she was asleep. However, at that moment, Su Yu was also on the bed, sharing it with her. Xia Linxian was extremely shocked. His daughter's innocence. After hearing the commotion, Yi Xian and a few of the demon students rushed to Xia Jingyu's tent. When they arrived at the scene, they were stunned. Xia Jingyu slept naked with Su Yu. The people outside Xia Jingyu's tent were dumbstruck. Feeling that many unusual eyes were staring at her, Xia Jingyu's face started to turn red. She, who was noble and innocent, could not stand all the unusual eyes staring at her. "All of you are to get out." Xia Linxian was startled for some time. His eyes were gloomy like water, as though they were like a volcano that was about to erupt. Yi Xian immediately led the students away. As he was clever and vigilant, he greatly emphasized to the demon students not to spread the information of Su Yu in the tent. Once Bai Qixiong noticed, he would break his jade pendant, which would cause all of them, including Su Yu, to perish together. However, it would be difficult to keep the secret for too long. Xia Linxuan's cold eyes were filled with indescribable anger. As he looked at his daughter, he felt that what she did was not worthy. Moreover, he felt pain and anger within his heart. In order to save Su Yu, who she had not known for that long, did she need to sacrifice something so great? Now that everyone knew that his daughter had lost her chastity to Su Yu, even though they had not reached that stage yet, his daughter's good reputation was completely tarnished. What man would marry a lady who had slept naked with another man? When he finally glared at Su Yu, his heart was burning with anger. Even though he was extremely angry, he understood that the matter was not entirely Su Yu's fault. Unless Su Yu had no way out, he would not have escaped into the tent. Suppressing his anger, Xia Linxian said with a very low voice, "Su Yu. Tell me, how are you going to settle this issue?" Su Yu took a deep breath and said in an apologetic tone, "I will leave it to Housemaster Xia to decide how to handle this issue." Understood. Xia Linxian thought to himself for a short while. Not allowing anyone to interfere, he said, "There is only one way to maintain the good reputation of my daughter, and that is to marry her." Xia Jingyu's heart felt as though it had been struck by lightning. Her face turned red and she disagreed firmly, "No, father. As Su Yu and Xia Jingyu had not known each other for very long, Xia Jingyu did not have many feelings for Su Yu, she only had good impressions of him. She was not prepared to marry Su Yu. "Humph. Do you still have a choice? We will let Su Yu decide for himself." Xia Linxian glared at his daughter. He resented her for not bringing credit to herself. If he did not use this opportunity to force Su Yu to marry his daughter, would his daughter have the reputation to be able to marry other men in the future? Of course, with his daughter's exceptional looks, there would be many men laying their eyes on her and it would not be difficult for her to get married. However, if she wanted to marry someone of the same status as her, this matter would be a stain that she could not clean off. Su Yu opened his mouth and apologized harshly, "Housemaster Xia, I cannot agree to your proposal. Sienna is my fiancée and I cannot let her down." Xia Jingyu's heart, which was in high spirits, gradually toned down upon hearing the rejection. She was worried that she would be married to Su Yu in this state of confusion. She did not know why, but after she was rejected, her heart was not as peaceful as she expected. Instead, she felt disappointed. He actually rejected her. It was difficult to ease Xia Linxuan's rage. His beard and hair started to stand, and while biting his teeth, he uttered every word with a pause in between. "Because of you, my daughter's good reputation is destroyed. If you are not going to marry her, then let me ask you, how are you going to compensate her?" Su Yu was at a loss. After being startled for some time, he paid his respects and said sincerely, "Housemaster Xia and Senior Xia, please give me some time to think. After the holy meet is over and after I settle my marriage matters with Sienna, I will give both of you an explanation." Xia Linxian was boiling with rage. This matter could not be dragged on any longer. He couldn't tolerate that once they left, Su Yu decided not to answer for his actions. In the end, his daughter was soft and could not bear to force Su Yu to marry her. She persuaded, "Father. Let's settle this matter after Su Yu has settled his marriage matters with Sienna." Xia Linxian was extremely furious. Even though he was fighting for his daughter's rights, she went against him. "Su Yu. I will remember this. This matter is not over yet." Xia Linxian stormed off. Xia Linxian did not understand. The Duke of Xianyu had lost his power and influence, making it almost impossible for Su Yu to achieve anything big in the future. As for his daughter, she possessed good qualities and looks. Moreover, he himself was a martial artist at level 7 and could help Su Yu with his training in the future. Why was Su Yu still so persistent about marrying Qin Xianer? When her father walked far away, Xia Jingyu said softly, "You do not need to take my father's words to heart. I do not need you to take responsibility for me, I only hope that you can take good care of Xianer." Su Yu was moved but ashamed at the same time. "I am indebted to the Duke of Xinyu. Before he died, he entrusted his daughter to me. I cannot abandon Xianer and stop caring about her. After everything is settled, I will give you an explanation." As she listened to Su Yu's difficulties, she realized that it was all because of his gratitude towards the Duke of Xinyu. The disappointment in her heart eased slightly and she started to sympathize with Su Yu. Everyone thought that Su Yu soared to the top with a flap of his wings. Who would have expected him to be caught in the imperial family's fight for power, and end up in dire straits? With a leisurely tone, Xia Jingyu said, "You can call me Jingyu. Can you tell me the situation with Xianer?" Su Yu nodded. After 1 hour, Xia Jingyu was both gratified and worried. She was thankful that Qin Xianer was safe and sound, and had escaped to the Fenghuang Empire. It was a very strong country, no weaker than the Fenglin Empire. As such, the power of the Fenglin Empire was unable to threaten Xianer. However, she was worried that Su Yu was determined to participate in the holy meet for the sake of revenge. The chances of him getting to first place were slim. Not only that, he might end up in a perilous position. The imperial capital was the first prince's grand territory. After the holy meet had ended and the holy seal in between Su Yu's eyebrows disappeared, there would no longer any obstacle stopping the first prince from killing Su Yu. In a situation where the first prince activated all the strong martial artists in the imperial capital, even if Su Yu had achieved level 9, he would be full of despair. This meant that Su Yu would be fighting with his life on the line. If he could not attain the first position, then the only path remaining for him was death. Su Yu had also gotten a lot of information. He found out that on the day he escaped, the Duke of Xianyu was rescued by the third prince and did not die. However, he had lost one of his arms. That news had caused Su Yu to be over the moon. However, there was another piece of news that caused him to be completely at a loss. In view of the second prince being killed by the traitors, the Duke of Xianyu's charge had been decided. In 10 days' time, he would be executed. According to the time, Su Yu deduced that the 10th day would be the day when the holy meet ended. Su Yu did not have any extra time. That fact had caused Su Yu to be more determined to achieve first place in the holy meet. He had to achieve first position, otherwise the Duke of Xianyu would die. For the remaining days, let me duel with you so that we can learn from one another. I hope that this will help strengthen your abilities. Otherwise, at your current level, the chances of you getting into the top 30 are slim, not to mention first position. Xia Jingyu was moved by Su Yu's persistence and gratitude towards the Duke of Xianyu. Hence, she decided to support him with all her strength. Su Yu lightly shook his head. "No." "Why?" Xia Jingyu lightly bit her lips. Su Yu said calmly. "The first prince wants to get rid of me quickly. After I enter the imperial capital, he might send assassins to kill me secretly. If it is revealed that I am among you, he might kill all of you as well in order to cover up the truth. I cannot drag all of you down with me," Su Yu said slowly. The appearance of Bai Qixing had proven that Su Yu's words were real and not deliberately exaggerated. Even though Xia Jingyu understood, she could not hold her words in anymore and said, "Then what are you going to do? If we cannot protect you, then who else can?" Su Yu was a poor village boy and the most powerful person he knew was the Duke of Xianyu alone. Xia Jingyu could not think of anyone else that Su Yu knew. "There is one more person." Su Yu's eyes shone. The next morning, the Martial Arts Training Institute headed towards the imperial capital as if nothing had happened. Su Yu disguised himself as a servant and blended in with the crowd. As for the holy seal in between his eyebrows, he covered it secretly. After many warnings by Xia Linxian, the demon students pretended that they did not know a thing and slowly entered the imperial capital. Somewhere far away from the crowd, Bai Qixiong and bodyguard Chen had been secretly observing them for a long time. Bodyguard Chen shook his head gently, seems that he is really not with them. We wasted our night. Bai Qixiong was a bit furious. This crafty kid. Seems like he had really escaped. We will return immediately and report back to the first prince. After entering the imperial capital, Suyu stared at Xia Jingyu with mixed feelings. Xia Jingyu's snow-like eyes were trembling and she was at a loss. Feelings of grief were rolling about in her heart. In order to prevent anyone from noticing, Suyu and Xia Jingyu did not bid each other farewell with words. Instead, they used their eyes to send each other off. That farewell might be forever. If Suyu were unable to attain the holy crown, then it would be difficult for him to avoid death. Taking advantage of an opportunity when no one was looking, Suyu entered an alley and disappeared. Xia Jingyu's shoulders were trembling and her heart was full of grief. Why? Why do you need to torture yourself like this? Xia Linxian was a strong martial artist of level 7. As such, how could he not notice that Suyu had left? He lightly patted her daughter's shoulders and sighed. You could have forced him to stay. Given that he values relationships and gratitude highly, if you had used death to threaten him, he would definitely have compromised and stayed. Xia Jingyu's eyes became complicated. Father, let him go. I do not wish to be like the heaven that binds him. Chapter 47. I am stronger than you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. The 10 demon students were moving towards their destination. The one leading them was an 18-year-old young man who was composed and had a very firm face. The muscles on his body were full of explosive power. As though he felt something, he turned back and managed to capture Suyu disappearing into the alley. Shaoli, is he Suyu, the guy who had been driven away? The firm young man's eyes were filled with extreme anger. Silver-haired Shaoli felt his anger and instantly knew the reason behind it. The firm young man was furious as his dream lover, Xia Jingyu, sacrificed her innocence in order to save Suyu. Shaoli had been defeated by Suyu and he could not bring himself to forget that. As such, at that instant, he decided to embellish the story. Humph. Yes, that's him. Once he managed to comprehend the holy decree, then he stopped paying attention to all of us. Big brother Zheng, you managed to comprehend the holy decree much earlier than him. What is Suyu compared to you? He is just a small fry who managed to climb up the ranks from being a good .4. Silver student. He had better not come across me again. The firm young man clenched his fists. As his eyes swept past Xia Jingyu, who had a fairy-like figure, he was unable to stop himself from being infatuated with her. The arrogant and conceited Shaoli respected and stood behind the man because he was the #1 ranked demon student in the Xianyu Prefecture Training Institute, Zheng Yilin. He was the only demon student who had managed to comprehend the holy decree in the Martial Arts Training Institute. His level of abilities greatly surpassed the rest of the demon students of the same generation, causing him to be unmatched in the training institute. At the holy meet, he had the highest hope of achieving the holy crown. Shaoli recognized the abilities of Suyu. However, in front of Zheng Yilin, Suyu probably could not last beyond his first attack. The third prince was born of a concubine. It was rumored that a few years back, the monarch messed around with his citizens, resulting in the birth of a boy who was later brought back into the imperial palace. It was a pity that in the palace, the third prince did not have any trusted aides. Even though he treated worthy citizens with respect, which gave him a good reputation among the citizens, why was it that he did not have the power to compete with his 2 older brothers for the throne? Even Duke Jiuchuan, who supported him on the surface, had his whole family beheaded by the third prince's two older brothers for the crime of conspiracy. As of then, there was only a small group of powerful parties who dared to support the third prince. All the ministers and generals, excluding those with moderate views, were all standing on the first prince's side. Having experienced the Duke of Shenyu's punishment, which was an example to others, the ministers and generals with moderate views had started to lean towards the first prince. With that, the first prince was awaiting the death of the monarch. With his death, the first prince would successfully become the Fonglin Empire's new monarch and he would be in control of the big empire from then on. The third prince had no intentions of fighting for the throne. Hence, he lived in the seclusion of the imperial palace to show that he was not seeking fame and wealth. Throughout the year, he quietly trained himself in the prince's palace and kept away from the world's affairs. On that day, a young man quietly stood outside the entrance. He was wearing a plaited bamboo hat and a palm bark rain cape. He had an indescribably handsome face. "Who are you?" The level 4 commander of the entrance guards questioned the young man vigilantly. The young man's deep and starry eyes shone brightly and he said, "The third prince wishes to meet me." He stuck his finger upwards near the middle of his eyebrows. His plaited bamboo hat was lifted up slightly and a holy seal shone for a second. The eyes of the commander of the entrance guards shone brightly and said in a low voice, "Wait here." After drinking a cup of tea, an old man wearing purple clothes came out of the entrance and surveyed Su Yu's whole body with an indifferent look. He stroked his beard, turned around and returned to the palace. Without turning his head back, he said, "Follow me." The old man brought Su Yu deep into the prince's palace immediately. There were birds singing, flowers giving off fragrance, and calmly flowing water. The palace was peaceful with an auspicious atmosphere. There was a magnificent pavilion standing tall and upright in the middle of a pond. Within the pavilion, there was a young man wearing a white shirt with long hair fluttering about randomly. He was holding an ancient book and was flipping through it quietly. He was scholarly and refined, with a peaceful expression. It was the third prince, who did not seek fame and wealth and was living in seclusion of the imperial palace. "Third prince, the person you wanted to meet has arrived." The old man stood with respect. The third prince raised his eyes. Even though his eyes looked dull, they were as deep as the sea and rays of wisdom would flash across them from time to time. "Su Yu, long time no see." The white-shirted young man was indeed the world-famous third prince. A laugh from him was like a breath of fresh air. Su Yu removed his plaited bamboo hat. With his eyes as calm as water, he said, "Third prince. I did not expect you to come to my palace." The third prince smiled indifferently and quietly surveyed Su Yu. Su Yu laughed indifferently, "I did not expect you to see me so easily either." The third prince shook his head gently and laughed as usual. However, his tone gradually became cold. "You are wrong. I allowed you to enter so that it would be impossible for you to escape. Do it." The third prince suddenly turned hostile. After a short while, 3 shadows who had been hiding for some time appeared from the pond surrounding the pavilion. 2 of them were at level 5 upper tier, while the remaining one was at level 5 peak. The 3 of them were holding a diamond steel net and struck at Su Yu abruptly. Given that they were so close to Su Yu, it was impossible for him to avoid the net. With the net so huge it could cover heaven, the 3 men managed to cover all the clear space around the pavilion, cutting off Su Yu's escape route. The net managed to cover Su Yu's head. At that moment, the 3 strong martial artists at level 5 by subdued Su Yu so that he would be unable to move. Su Yu was unable to resist and said coldly, "Third prince, what is the meaning of this?" The third prince had a harsh expression. "You have killed my older brother, becoming a criminal to my family. Since you come here on your own accord, how can I not kill you? Take him away." Having walked right into the trap, Su Yu was escorted to the third prince's backyard. The third prince followed in anger so that he could personally interrogate him. The purple-clothed housekeeper's eyes shone as he bowed his head. After escorting Su Yu to the backyard, the level 5 peak commander who was leading the escort could not help but twitch his mouth and look down on Su Yu. I heard that the Duke of Xinyu's son-in-law was very powerful and was even able to comprehend the holy decree. I did not expect him to be caught so easily, his name falls short of reality. However, an indifferent laughter could be heard. Lin Xiao, you are wrong. He lives up to his name of being powerful and he deliberately got himself caught by you just now. The level 5 peak commander, Lin Xiao, was shocked, he deliberately got himself caught. As though Su Yu was replying to the indifferent laughter from the back, he shouted with a low voice, Purple Star Thunderbolt. The violent thunder arc contained a breath of extermination. The air contained a burning smell. Both of his fists moved freely, emitting a thunder-like sound. The diamond steel net could not withstand the thunderbolt and was destroyed. The steel net was split open. With a shake of Su Yu's body, he escaped from the two hands holding onto his shoulder and managed to escape from the steel net easily. Lin Xiao was shocked. The diamond steel net was extremely hard. If anyone below level 5 got caught in it, they would be unable to escape. Not good. Capture him quickly. Lin Xiao was furious and he took action immediately. Stop. An order by an indifferent voice could be heard from behind Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao looked back, confused. Su Yu turned his body. With a calm expression, he stared at the person behind Lin Xiao and laughed lightly, seems like I was not wrong. I am indeed the person that the third prince wants to meet. The third prince smiled indifferently, as though his extremely cold expression a few moments ago belonged to another person. His smile felt as though it was a breath of fresh air and the third prince was surprised. How could Brother Su tell that I was putting on a show and pretending to capture to you? Su Yu's eyes were clear and deep. The third prince needs me. He purposely captured me for someone else to see. I would guess that someone else is your housekeeper, the purple-clothed old man. The third prince's eyes shrunk and praised Su Yu. On that day at the Duke of Xinyu's palace, I felt that you were different from a normal person. I felt that you possessed great wisdom and after what happened just now, it seems that I was right. That purple-clothed housekeeper of mine had been secretly bribed by the first prince to observe me. If he knew that I received you joyfully, my life would be turned upside down. If I offended you just now, I hope that you could look the other way. The third prince treated Su Yu with modesty. Su Yu's faces was full of admiration for the third prince. He had deduced that the third prince was very calculating and shrewd. After what had just happened, it seemed that Su Yu was right. Even though the third prince knew that the purple-clothed housekeeper had been bribed by the first prince to observe him secretly, he acted ignorant in order to find an opportunity to go against the first prince. He deliberately hid his capabilities and bided his time to confuse the first prince. In reality, he was secretly accumulating power and waiting for an opportunity to compete with the first prince for the throne. Lin Xiao could not believe his eyes. The third prince actually told that secret to Su Yu. Could it be that the third prince had an important role for Su Yu to play? A group of people entered the secret room. Lin Xiao did not move even half a step. He was determined to protect the third prince, and he did so by glaring vigilantly at Su Yu. Brother Su, you took huge risks to look for me, it cannot be just for the sake for an introduction, right? The third prince laughed elegantly. Su Yu drank a mouthful of tea and said, "Didn't I say before that you need me? I am here to help you. What can you help me with?" The third prince laughed indifferently as before. Su Yu's eyes shone. "Of course. To help you fight for the throne." "Fight for the throne." 4 words. Su Yu said every word with a pause, making them so powerful they could shake the heavens. The 4 words shook heaven and earth, causing their situation to change. Lin Zhao's expression changed abruptly. A flash of agitation and murderous intent passed across his eyes. How dare you say these kinds of treasonous words? Kneel down now and allow yourself to be captured. Stop it, the third prince shouted. His eyes gradually became narrower and he glared at Su Yu. What are you saying, brother Su? I do not understand. Su Yu smiled. Both you and I understand. Since ancient times, a monarch built his success on the dead bodies of 10,000 soldiers during the fight for imperial power. After the first prince ascends the throne, you will be a big problem to him and he will get rid of you eventually. Given that you are extremely calculating and shrewd, I don't believe that you have not taken any precautions. The third prince stared at Su Yu for some time and laughed loudly. Ha! Su Yu, you are good. I have made a wrong judgment of you, you are smarter than I thought. The Duke of Xianyu really found an impressive son. Law. At that moment, the group of people gradually stopped laughing. The third prince laughed indifferently. You are not wrong. I will not go down without a fight. However, what can you do to help me? If I wanted to, you would be unable to exit even half a step out of the prince's palace, not to mention go against my powerful older brother. Su Yu's eyes were unfathomable. With the help of the Holy King, all the imperial power that one possesses is as good as ants. The third prince's thoughts changed and his laughter gradually stiffened. You wish to participate in the holy meet and attain the first position so that you can get the Holy King to grant you one of your wishes. That's right. Su Yu said indifferently. On that day, I swore that if I don't kill the first prince in my lifetime, then I will never be a man. I will achieve the first position in the holy meet and ask for one wish. That is to kill the first prince. Su Yu could not suppress the hatred in his heart. Once the first prince dies, you will be the only prince left. If you are still unable to ascend to the throne, that means your abilities are questionable and you might as well give up on being the monarch. The people in the secret room were startled. Su Yu actually wanted to attain the first position in the holy meet, even though he knew that his efforts would be in vain. After hearing Su Yu's words, the third prince became silent for a moment. His bright eyes immediately became dim and he felt disappointed instantly. From talking to Su Yu just now, the third prince found out that Su Yu was very experienced at socializing and he had a clear insight of the world's affairs. This had made the third prince feel as though he had met someone who was on intimate terms with him by chance. However, after listening to what Su Yu said, he felt disappointed. Even though Su Yu was intelligent and powerful, he was too conceited. He had aimed very high, but if he fell, he would fall very low. He was arrogant and could not take setbacks. He would not be useful in an important role. At the holy meet, all the empire's demon students were gathered. Every single one of them was brilliant among their generation. If they were placed anywhere in the empire, they would be considered geniuses who shook the world. Even though Su Yu was powerful, it would be impossible for him to compete with them. As Lin Xiao could not hold back his laughter anymore, he laughed angrily. You are arrogant and ignorant. Even I cannot guarantee that I can get into the top 50 in the holy meet. What right do you think you have to get the crown? Su Yu had a calm expression and he said coldly, the reason is simple. It is because I am stronger than you. Chapter 48. The secret treasure in the royal family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio, with just you. Lin Xiao laughed angrily. Then let me give it a try. Let me see how strong the Duke of Xianyu's son. Law is. Lin Xiao's body turned into a black shadow that was shaped like a cheetah. The cheetah was vigorous, nimble and full of explosive power. Mountain-splitting hammer. Lin Xiao's body moved like a shadow. He clenched both his fists, held them above his head and attacked with a loud crash. A thick layer of green luster covered the whole hammer. The hammer looked as if it fell from the heavens, through vast and boundless deep space. Dim green luster followed behind the hammer and brought out shadow. The sound of sobbing could be heard as it lingered faintly in the air. The strong and powerful air in the atmosphere lifted the black hair hanging in front of Su Yu's forehead, revealing a pair of vast and starry eyes that seemed to shine forever like the stars in the sky. Su Yu revealed a cold expression and his silhouette turned to that of the wind. A moment ago, he was still sitting on the guest seat. The next moment, there was only a fragmentary shadow left. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Ever since he recovered from his injuries and his cultivation base achieved level 4 peak, his vital energy had increased, causing the power of Purple Star Thunderbolt to multiply. It was the same Purple Star Thunderbolt that once had difficulty defeating someone of level 5 peak. As of then, it was more than sufficient to defeat someone of level 5 peak. The thick and violent thunder arc was shining very brightly and sounded like thunder. Bang! Su Yu attacked straight on. A hammer and a punch were rumbling, resulting in the creation of fierce wind and powerful waves. The cold wind was willful and was blowing in all directions. The power of the hammer and punch were frightening. Both of them maintained their initial position when they collided, and none of them were being pushed back. Lin Xiao was surprised. He, who was at level 5 peak, had been successfully blocked by Su Yu. The third prince's dim eyes suddenly turned bright. On that day at the Duke of Xinyu's palace, when Su Yu was struck by the level 5 peak first prince's one-shot sure kill attack, he suffered a fatal injury and almost died. After just a short while, he actually managed to be on par with someone of level 5 peak. Not bad. However, that was still too weak. Lin Xiao gradually withdrew his surprised look. How could he admit defeat in front of the third prince? Triple earth-splitting pattern. Lin Xiao's momentum changed. Triple earth-splitting pattern, the top medium-level cultivation technique. At that moment, the hammer descended from heaven, and as if it were a mountain falling from the starry sky, had a power that could smash mountains and rivers into pieces. The thick green luster had the shape of a flame which could burn through heaven. The frightening fist was shaped like a mountain and could extinguish a vast territory. At that moment, Su Yu's expression was as calm as water. The heavenly finger. Facing a strong and oppressive attack, Su Yu raised his finger high up into the sky. At that moment, his whole body was harmonizing with nature. It was as though he had become the person in the painting who had transcended into a greater entity, and did not belong to the human population. He struck his finger downwards. There wasn't any magnificent technique, any brilliance or dazzling posture. There was only an ordinary finger. However, that finger contained indescribable secrets. The pattern of the finger mesmerized the people. Lin Xiao felt an impressive force of nature coming towards him, without leaving him an escape route. In the dangerous situation, he switched to defense tactics. He felt severe pain from his arms. The invisible and impressive force had forced him to retreat backwards, causing his back to knock against a stone pillar. He tasted blood in his throat and Lin Xiao's expression changed. He had actually lost to Su Yu's counterattack. The third prince's eyes were glowing with pride and happiness, so bright that nothing could compare to them. In just 10 days, Su Yu could actually match someone of level 5 peak. Bedo Dem Lin Xiao was not satisfied and he made another move. That's it. You cannot win against Su Yu. The third prince gestured in admonition. Lin Xiao was not satisfied with returning back to the third prince's side, which made him uneasy. How was it, third prince? Do I have the rights to participate in the holy meet? The third prince raised his eyes and looked at Su Yu for the first time. Su Yu's deep and profound eyes, persistence and steadfastness had moved him. After muttering to himself for some time, the third prince looked as though he had made his decision and nodded his head. Good. I will make an additional bet on you. Additional. Su Yu looked pensive. I will help you attain the holy crown. If you succeed, you will help me ascend to the throne. The third prince said. Su Yu looked at him and nodded, of course. Lin Xiao, prepare the best training room, the best medicinal materials, the best teacher and the best training partner for Mr. Su immediately. The third prince was bolder than a normal person. He actually agreed to lend Su Yu a helping hand. Moreover, he had also provided Su Yu with the best resources. Bring out all the best resources in the prince's palace. If there are any things that Su Yu wants, you will bring all of them to him. If the prince's palace does not have it, you will go to the market to buy. If the market does not have it, send some men down to look for it in the capital. Do you understand? Lin Xiao was frightened. The third prince was going to entrust all his hope in Su Yu. As the third prince's trusted subordinate, Lin Xiao understood his situation. If he did not become the monarch, he would be killed by the first prince. He could understand if the third prince fought for any rays of hope. However, he could not understand why the third prince placed all his hopes on Su Yu, a young man whom he was not well acquainted with, and who had less than top-notch abilities. After a few hours, Su Yu shut himself out and started to train immediately. Lin Xiao returned back to the third prince's side to report to him after carrying out his tasks. He could not hide his puzzled expression. Master, do you really trust Su Yu that much? Please allow me to tell you the truth. Even though Su Yu's level of ability is above me, saying that he will achieve the crown at the holy meet sounds like an idiot spouting nonsense. Master, for you to put all your hopes on him, isn't it a bit careless? The third prince sighed softly, who said that I had placed all my hopes on him. Lin Xiao did not understand. Master, if so, then what are you trying to achieve by giving him the best resources? Those precious resources can be used to cultivate a few more secret bodyguards, and that is worth more than spending it on Su Yu. After all, spending all those resources on Su Yu is no different from achieving nothing in the end. The third prince laughed indifferently as he recalled his past. In my life, I have seen and met many people. I have many friends, but he is the only one on intimate terms with me. Lin Xiao was relieved. It turned out that the third prince and Su Yu regarded one another highly and treated each other with respect. Both of them were more intelligent than normal people, both of them had lives full of ups and downs, and both of them had reached a point in life where they had to make a huge decision. I do not expect him to repay me in any way. As for those resources, take it as a present from me, someone who is on intimate terms with him. If he attains the crown by luck, then all is good. If he fails to attain the crown, then so be it. For the upcoming holy meet, I have made other preparations, and that is my real chance to turn the tables. The third prince laughed in. After practicing for 10 days, Su Yu exhausted most of his vital energy. Looking at it from another perspective, there was a slight growth in him, and he was close to achieving level 5. The third prince had given Su Yu all his best resources, using all his power to help Su Yu train. Su Yu was close to achieving level 5. Feeling that the vital energy in his body was continuously expanding, Su Yu became very absorbed in his training. With his body shaking, the vital energy in Su Yu's body was at its maximum, as though it was trying to destroy the obstacle between level 4 peak and level 5. Half a day passed. Su Yu felt a noise ringing in his head. Immediately after that, he breathed a peculiar kind of air into his body. His vital energy had doubled. Su Yu had made a breakthrough to level 5 of the martial path. As Su Yu felt the abundance of vital energy of level 5, he found that it was twice as strong as that of a level 4. Su Yu then realized that for him to be able to defeat a level 5 even though he was level 4 was very impressive. If he had another duel with Lin Xiao, he was confident he could achieve a complete victory against Lin Xiao. However, Su Yu understood his situation. His level of abilities were not high enough. In fact, they were far from enough. It was nonsense for him to wish for the first position in the holy meet with his current level of abilities. There were still 3 days remaining before the holy meet, and in those 3 days, he needed to put in all his effort and train crazily. He had 3 objectives in his training. First, Tempest, a middle-level cultivation technique. It was only at stage 3 lower class, and there was still much room for improvement. Second, Purple Star Thunderbolt, a saint-level cultivation technique. It was only at entry level and had yet to achieve lower class. With every small bit of progress, its power would increase tremendously. Last, the Holy Decree. He was unable to measure how many layers he had comprehended. However, he would continue to observe its progress like before. With every small bit of the Holy Decree that he managed to comprehend, its power would increase by a layer. For the next 3 days, he would use space-time manipulation, and he would train crazily in a time flow that was 30 times faster than the normal world. With 3 days in that time flow, Suyu would have a total of 99 days to train, which was equivalent to 3 full months. Time was tight, Suyu closed his eyes and immediately started to train. In the first prince's palace, a pigeon delivered a message. Seeing the letter on the pigeon, the first prince's eyes turned cold and he emitted a deadly intent from his body. On the right side of his face, there was a long and hideous scar which looked like a centipede. He wore an eye patch on his right eye, and he had also become more cruel and ruthless compared to in the past. Good job, younger brother. Suyu is actually in your hands. The first prince clenched his fist and was full of hatred. The death of the second prince and the pain from his disfigured face was deeply engraved into the first prince's heart and would not dissipate easily. As long as Suyu was alive, he would continue to feel uneasy. However, Suyu had entered the third prince's palace, making it impossible for the first prince to assassinate him. There were strong martial artists in the third prince's palace. Secretly assassinating Suyu sounded like a whimsical story. If he was discovered and if the third prince used the opportunity to expose his plot to the whole world, then the sanctuary might send someone to kill him immediately. Before the holy meet ended, he could not make any reckless moves. By Qi, dispatch an order down to the imperial capital's guards. Tell them to monitor the city strictly. After the holy meet, the whole city should keep a lookout for Suyu. Once he is found, kill him on the spot. The first prince dispatched the order coldly. After the holy meet had ended and the holy seal had disappeared, he would kill Suyu in front of the audience as there would not be any risks. Bai Qixiong's body was filled with cold sweat. Suyu had actually slipped into the imperial capital right under his eyes. Understood. I will do it immediately. Bai Qixiong turned around hurriedly as he wanted to redeem himself for his mistake. Wait a moment. The first prince's face turned gloomy. Because of your incompetence, I might be exposed. Now, I will entrust one task to you. Bai Qixiong kneeled down with agitation. I did not manage to fulfill the previous task, please punish me. There is no need for me to punish you as I had used you to help me kill Suyu. There will be opportunities for you to redeem yourself in the future. Now, I want you to fulfill a task. The first prince said coldly, the task is to kill bodyguard Chen, whom you had worked with. When Bai Qixiong and bodyguard Chen worked together to catch Suyu, bodyguard Chen had seen Bai Qixiong's true colors, and he knew that Bai Qixiong was the first prince's subordinate. Yet, Suyu was still alive. As a precaution, bodyguard Chen must be killed so that all the evidence could be destroyed. Understood. Bai Qixiong wiped off his cold sweat. One more thing. Suddenly, the first prince said enigmatically, how is the progress on the cultivation technique I gave you going? Bai Qixiong shivered with fear, took out a scroll and gave it to the first prince with both his hands. First prince, this is the most recent comprehension, please take a look. The first prince took the scroll. As he looked at the scroll, his eyes were burning brilliantly. Not bad, this is quite well done. Remember, do not spread the cultivation technique that you have seen before. Bai Qixiong bowed his head and took his leave quickly. After Bai Qixiong left, the first prince's eyes gradually turned cold. Master. The first prince shouted lightly and bowed. A red-robed old man with deep eyes descended from the rooftop as though he was a ghost. He was the first prince's martial path master, a frightening martial artist who was at level 7 peak of the martial path. The first prince handed the scroll over to the red-robed old man. The old man took a look at the scroll, which was by Qi-xiong's comprehension of floating light shadow. His deep eyes shone brilliantly and he laughed with a satisfied look. Not bad, this is indeed the last part of the comprehension of floating light shadow, as expected of the holy talent who attained position 11 in the holy meat 50 years ago. He had actually managed to comprehend the saint-level cultivation technique kept by the imperial family to this level. The first prince laughed coldly. Bai Qi-xiong might not know yet. The cultivation technique that I passed him is the cultivation technique that had been handed down through the imperial family, the saint-level cultivation technique floating light shadow. It is only possible for a holy genius like him, who attained position 11 in the holy meat, to comprehend it. Chapter 49. Dragons Meeting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 49. Dragons Meeting. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. For 100 years, no one had been able to comprehend floating light shadow because it required a high level of comprehension. No one in the world, apart from the 10 holy talents who had extremely high levels of comprehension, were able to comprehend floating light shadow. The first prince wanted to borrow the abilities of the 10 holy talents to help him comprehend the technique so that he could cultivate it, since it had been lost for years. However, every batch of the top 10 holy talents were invited to the sanctuary, causing all of them to be beyond the first prince's reach. Bai Qi-xiong was the only exception. As the holy meat participant who had attained the 11th position, he was the only person, apart from the top 10 holy talents, who had the highest possibility of comprehending the saint-level cultivation technique, and he was able to do so. "Lo, Master, is it possible for me to successfully learn this cultivation technique using this comprehension?" The first prince's eyes were burning with excitement. The red-robed old man shook his head lightly. "It is still not enough. After all, Bai Qi-xiong is not a real sanctuary disciple and lacks a certain level of comprehension. His comprehension of floating light shadow is not perfect and he is a step away from successfully cultivating this technique. I will go back and refine his comprehension, so that you can understand it easily and successfully master this cultivation technique." "Thank you, Master." The first prince was excited, however his eyes immediately turned cold. After this, Bai Qi-xiong would become useless. Since he has seen the saint-level cultivation technique that has been passed down in the royal family for generations, and he tried to assassinate a holy seal-bearer, it is about time for me to kill him. The red-robed old man laughed sinisterly. "Leave this matter to me. A pawn like Bai Qi-xiong must be killed when the time is right." 3 days passed. The martial path grand event, the holy meet, which was held once every year in the Fenglin Empire, was about to begin. Strong martial artists, as well as people from all over the world, gathered to watch this grand event in the empire. Under the current peaceful and flourishing atmosphere, they moved towards the event hall slowly. At the third prince's palace, the ambience was becoming increasingly nervous. At nightfall, in the pavilion, the third prince felt uneasy and he continued pacing back and forth as he read his book. "Master, the royal family's dragons meeting is about to begin. We cannot wait for Su Yu any longer," Lin Xiao said, as he could tell that the third prince was feeling uneasy. The third prince put down his book and lightly shook his head. "Don't worry. There is still time." Suddenly, wind started to blow in the courtyard. A purple-shirted figure, who had the shadows of white clouds, appeared calmly in front of the pavilion. His face was as handsome, he was glowing with pride and with an indescribable charm. He had a pair of deep eyes which pierced all creations on earth. He had black hair that flowed like a waterfall, hanging naturally behind his back. He wore a comfortable purple shirt that was lightly blown by the wind. The third prince wore a smile as he walked towards him and cupped his fists. "Congratulations, Brother Su. Your expression and abilities are incomparable to the past. Third Prince, thank you for your help. Su Yu clasped his hands in gratitude. Lin Xiao looked displeased. He felt that it was not worth it for the third prince since he had wasted his resources. With his normal tone, he said, Su Yu, I hope you live up to the third prince's kindness. Su Yu's eyes shone and he looked at Lin Xiao. Brother Lin, I know that on that day you were not satisfied when you were unable to match up to me. How about we have another battle right now? Lin Xiao's eyebrows twitched a little. He felt that if he was more vigilant, he might not have lost to Su Yu. Therefore, he had been thinking about a rematch for a long time. Lin Xiao raised his eyes and looked at the third prince. The third prince muttered to himself for some time and nodded his head. He wanted to know why Su Yu was so confident. Of course, the third prince did not believe that in a mere 3 days, Su Yu's abilities would increase exponentially. He only felt that Su Yu's physical strength and injuries had recovered and that Su Yu was very full of confidence. With the third prince's approval, Lin Xiao was delighted. He was confident that he would not lose. It would be impolite for me to decline this duel. Lin Xiao stepped forward, raised his hands and uttered, mountain-splitting hammer. That hammer looked as though it came from heaven, with a frightening power just like in the past. Su Yu's expression was as calm as a sunny day. Tempest. Su Yu lifted his leg and gave a kick. With his kick, cold wind started to form, snow and ice started to fall. It was as if an ice dragon had ended the world. He had entered the world of snow and ice, made an army out of the cold wind, and caused everything to freeze. Lin Xiao gave a blood-curdling scream and retreated about 7 to 8 meters away. The thick and cold ice had condensed on his fists, causing them to freeze. His body was surrounded by a cold mist as though he had just walked out from a winter world, causing his whole body to shiver. Lin Xiao gasped with astonishment. The power of a Stage 3 upper-class medium-level cultivation technique. The third prince's expression changed. 3 days ago, Su Yu's Tempest was at Stage 3 lower class. However, in a mere 3 days, it had actually gone up by a class. The third prince's eyes were filled with astonishment. Looking back at Su Yu, he had not moved the slightest bit from his original position and he leisurely withdrew his leg. He had managed to achieve Stage 3 upper class for Tempest. As such, he was only 1 step away from achieving top class. Lin Xiao was astonished. However, he was dissatisfied. How could he admit defeat so easily? The vital energy in his body started to vibrate, causing the cold mist to evaporate. He closed the distance between Su Yu and himself, and roared, triple earth-splitting pattern. A green flame swept across the sky with a frightening power that could burn through the heavens and destroy the mountains and rivers, heading towards Su Yu. The strong energy of the attack had caused the wind to flutter against Su Yu's shirt. However, the wind was unable to disrupt his eyes, which were as calm as an autumn lake. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Su Yu counter-attacked leisurely. A layer of refined thunderbolt wrapped around his fists as if there were multiple thunder strikes, and they emitted powerful rays of light. When the fists collided, triple earth-splitting pattern dissipated in an instant. Blood started to overflow from Lin Xiao's mouth. His body ignored his orders and he was sent flying about 10 meters. Lin Xiao's organs took a huge blow, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He had suffered a minor injury. As though he was in a fantasy, Lin Xiao was extremely astonished. Comparing that same Purple Star Thunderbolt 3 days ago and to this one, its power did not just go up by a level. In fact, it seemed twice as powerful. As Lin Xiao pulled himself up, his eyes were full of astonishment. This time around, he was completely convinced. Thank you Mr. Su for showing mercy. The third prince's eyes shone brilliantly. Su Yu actually held back. If Su Yu did not hold back, would that fist have killed Lin Xiao on the spot? Su Yu had only spent 3 days training and had managed to become so strong, from being on par with a level 5 peak, to being able to easily kill one. How did Su Yu's abilities increase so much in a mere 3 days? The third prince combined the rumors that he had gotten from the Xianyu prefecture regarding Su Yu. A few months ago, Su Yu was just a normal silver student. However, as though he had risen like a comet, he cut open time and space, achieving the title of the Silver King with his abilities and suppressing 2 generations of Gold Kings. In no time, he defeated a demon student, making a name for himself as well as making the Martial Arts Training Institute a laughingstock. Su Yu's potential was rarely seen in one's life. If he were given more time, he would become a strong martial artist who was unmatched. The third prince felt that it was a pity. He then sighed depressingly, "How good will it be if I could give you another 3 years' time to train?" In 3 years' time, it would be difficult to ascertain how much Su Yu would grown. However, if he was still on the side of the third prince and went against the first prince, there would be higher chances of them being victorious against him. However, it is a pity that time and tide wait for no man. The Su Yu in his current state would not be of much help to the third prince. "Brother Su. The holy meet is tomorrow. Is there anything else that you need?" The third prince smiled. Before the catastrophe came, he was willing to do everything he could to help this demon student whom he was on intimate terms with. Su Yu pondered for some time, and lightly shook his head. "Resources are temporarily useless to me. What I need now is comprehension for when I am fighting." Within 3 days, he had digested uncountable amounts of Universe's miracle mineral plant, causing his blood vessels to be full of energy. The continual usage of resources would be useless as his abilities would not be strengthened by them. By experiencing more actual combat, his level of comprehension would increase, causing his body to be strengthened further. Unable to help Su Yu, the third prince sighed. As he raised his head and looked at the sky, his expression gradually became serious. "Su Yu, it is time for us to meet up with them." "Them?" Su Yu was confused. Surprised, the third prince said, "Can it be that the Duke of Xianyu did not tell you about it?" When the third prince recalled the time when the Duke of Xianyu bestowed the holy order upon Su Yu before his death, he felt relieved as his doubts were cleared up. In that situation, the Duke of Xianyu must not have had the time to tell Su Yu. There are 2 kinds of people participating in the holy meet held by the Empire. The first kind of people are the students from the Martial Arts Training Institute. The Training Institute had scouted for all the geniuses in the Empire and they are the key figures in the holy meet. The second kind of people represent the royal family in the holy meet. For example, you represent the Xianyu prefecture. Every duke from the 12 other prefectures can recommend one person to take part in the holy meet. Aside from you, there are 12 other representatives from the 12 other prefectures. Moreover, in the royal family, each of the 3 princes can also recommend one person to participate in the holy meet. Including you, there are a total of 16 representatives from the royal family. Over the years, on the day before the holy meet, the 16 representatives would gather once and hold the royal family's dragons meeting. During the meeting, the representatives would have friendly duels and learn from one another. Understanding your own level of abilities before the holy meet is extremely useful, so it is important for all of the 16 representatives to attend the meeting, the first prince explained patiently. Su Yu pondered for a moment and his eyes shone. Will the first prince be spectating? The third prince knew what Su Yu was thinking and nodded his head. The recommenders of the 16 representatives will be there as well. Big Brother and I will be spectating and you will be able to see him then. But the third prince reminded, if you want to kill him on the spot and perish with him, I would advise you not to do it. You already revealed Diabolic Sword, the secret technique of the soul, to him before. Big Brother would definitely take precautions against it and it would be almost impossible for you to kill him from another dimension. Su Yu had thought of that idea before. However, with the third prince's confirmation, he could only give up on the method of perishing together with the first prince disappointedly. Then, let's go. Su Yu's eyes turned cold. Ultimately, the only way for him to take his revenge was to attain the holy crown. Please wait for a moment. The person that I have recommended is still on his way. The third prince's eyes shone brilliantly. Each of the three princes could recommend a person for the holy meat. As such, the third prince was no exception. Su Yu did not feel strange at all. He had thought of using the holy meat as an opportunity to turn the tables against the first prince. As a calculating and shrewd person, it was impossible for the third prince not to have thoughts of that as well. Naturally, he had also arranged for someone trustworthy to take part in the holy meat. A few days ago, the third prince had said it was an additional bet. As of then, Su Yu understood its meaning. Behind the third prince, he had another strong martial artist. After waiting for half an hour, a young man, who walked like the wind, arrived with striding steps. He was about 16 years old and he wore a blue-colored robe. His figure was average and he looked normal. He had an ordinary expression and his eyes looked indifferent, as though he disregarded all creations on earth, giving off a cold and solitary feeling as a result. In his eyes, he treated Su Yu and Lin Xiao as though they did not exist, so that he would not be distracted. It was only until he was before the third prince that he knelt down. "Third prince, we can leave now." Su Yu frowned. Rather than thinking that the young man was cold and solitary, Su Yu felt that the young man gave off an air of arrogance. Other than the third prince, who caused him to lower his head willingly, he did not pay attention to anyone else. The third prince said calmly, "Dong Lin, please stand up." Dong Lin stood up extremely straight in his position. In his eyes, there was only the third prince alone, not Su Yu and Lin Xiao. Needless to say, he definitely had the abilities to be arrogant. Even though he was 16 years old, his abilities were at level 6 lower tier of the martial path. With his unbelievable talent, he was worthy of being called frightening. In the Martial Arts Training Institute, as far as what Su Yu knew, there was only one person who had achieved level 6 of the martial path. That person was the top demon student, Jing Yilin. Not only had he managed to comprehend the holy decree, he had also managed to train until he achieved level 6 lower tier of the martial path. He was a frightening demon student with a chance of getting into the top 10 in the holy meat. Dong Lin, who was in front of his eyes, was comparable to Jing Yilin. Chapter 50. The Clash of the Geniuses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. Since everyone has arrived, let's go. The third prince nodded his head. When he looked at Dong Lin, his eyes were filled with expectations and hope. Having felt the third prince's attitude, Su Yu understood the third prince had not placed his hopes in him. However, Su Yu did not have any objections. The third prince had given Su Yu precious resources and had kept him safe, but he wished for Su Yu to repay him. But, Su Yu's gratitude was insufficient to repay the third prince. Why would he bear hatred towards the third prince? The royal family's dragons meeting was held in the Holy Arena. The Holy Arena was built by the Empire solely for the holy meat. The construction cost hundreds of millions and it allowed 10,000 people to view the battle. Normally, the Holy Arena would be closed to the public and there would be strict security. There would be a large number of soldiers stationed outside as guards, not allowing anyone to take a single step inside. It was only that night, when the royal family held the dragons meeting, that the Holy Arena would be open for a short while, allowing members of the royal family to enter so that the 16 representatives could duel and learn from one another. That day, the 16 demon students who had been recommended by the royal family met one another under the moonlight. Of the 13 dukes, Duke Jiuquan's whole family had been beheaded and the Duke of Xianyu had been thrown into heaven's prison, causing both of them to be absent from the meeting. Of the princes, the second prince had been killed by Su Yu. Other than that, everyone else was at the Holy Arena. Su Yu. The first prince's eyes shrunk, he did not expect Su Yu to be there. The first prince knew that Su Yu had slipped into the imperial city quietly. He did not expect Su Yu to actually participate in the holy meet. Could it be that he wanted to use the holy meet as an opportunity to regain his former glory? If Su Yu managed to get into the top 10 and become a sanctuary disciple, he would make a name for himself. When he returned, destroying the first prince would be as easy turning his overhand. However, when the first prince thought of Su Yu's abilities, he shook his head and laughed. There was no chance for Su Yu would get into the top 10. The number of demon students at the holy meet was comparable to the clouds in the sky. Even though Su Yu was strong, it would be difficult for him to compete with them, unless it was in a few years. However, the first prince would not give Su Yu that much time. When the holy meet ended, he would pay any price to exterminate Su Yu, who he believed was a great hazard. Hearing the voice of the first prince, Su Yu looked in his direction. Without hiding his murderous intentions, he said coldly, "First prince, I have said before, if I don't kill you, I will never be a man. The heaven, earth, sun and moon shall be the witness to my oath." The first prince's eyelids started to twitch, and his deadly intent became stronger. If Su Yu did not die, he would continue to feel uneasy. These words shook the hearts of the people who heard them. They had also caused the happy atmosphere to come to a standstill. The audience who knew about the hatred between Su Yu and the royal family watched with cold eyes. "You overestimate yourself." The first prince tilted his body and looked at the young man. The young man held a sword, had short hair and looked at Su Yu coldly with his sharp eyes. He gave off a very powerful vibe that could cause the mountains to rumble and create very powerful waves in the sea. Su Yu's whole body was under a very heavy pressure, as though he was being crushed by a mountain, causing him to breathe heavily. "Humph." Su Yu hummed coldly. He jolted the vital energy in his body, emitting a powerful vibe to rival the young man's, causing them to cancel each other out in an instant. "Watch your words." The short-haired young man hummed with disdain. The first prince gave a bitter expression. "Enough. Duyuntian, why are you arguing with this kind of person, who do not know what he is saying?" The indifferent eyes of Dong Lin were filled with a rare fear. Level 6 upper tier. The third prince's pupils shrunk. The first prince had actually managed to nurture someone to level 6 upper tier like Duyuntian. "Dong Lin, if you were to fight him, what would your chances of winning be?" The third prince's heart was shaking as he felt a bad premonition. One careless move and the whole game was lost. If Duyuntian managed to defeat Dong Lin and the first prince ascended the throne, there would be no more chances for the third prince to rise to the top. Moreover, it is also possible that the third prince would suffer the same fate as the Duke of Xianyu, whereby he would be accused of treason, put in chains and thrown into the prison. Dong Lin's eyes were full of fighting spirit. He is very strong. However, if I display my full power, I might have a chance against him. Did that mean there was still a ray of hope for victory? The third prince's heart quietly felt at ease. The whole group of spectators sat down. In the big holy arena, there were only a few of them, causing the arena to be very open and spacious. At the same time, it was filled with a very cold atmosphere. To all the geniuses recommended by the royal family, tomorrow all of you will represent the royal family in duel with the 13 martial arts training institutes, achieving glory for the royal family. Tonight, all of you will duel and learn from one another, and this will be your warm-up for tomorrow's duel. The first prince portrayed himself as a normal spectator. He did not feel in the slightest bit that under the moonlight, the hideous scar on the right side of his face would be so gruesome and frightening. Duyuntian carried a sword while he was standing. With sharp eyes, he glanced at the other 15 geniuses. When his eyes swept across Su Yu, he stopped for a moment. However, as though he was scratching the surface, his eyes swept past him after a prolonged glance. After looking at everyone, Duyuntian shook his head coldly and withdrew from the arena. "I will not be participating." The first prince laughed. "Duyuntian, why don't you have a friendly duel with them? There is no one here that is worthy of my blade." "I am not interested." His arrogant speech left the remaining 15 geniuses enraged. However, the 15 geniuses could not be disappointed. As Du Yuntian was at level 6 upper tier, there were very few of them who were worthy to be his opponent. The only person which could be his opponent was the young genius recommended by the third prince, Dong Lin. However, from Du Yuntian's tone, Dong Lin was also not worthy of being his opponent. Dong Lin was full of pride. His eyes shone brilliantly, showing his desire to have a match with Du Yuntian. However, he got the hint from the third prince not to be forceful in trying to prove his abilities by defeating him, so that he could save his energy for the next day. The third prince's plan was that since Du Yuntian was arrogant and paid no attention to the rest of them, he would allow him to continue with his attitude. In the meantime, Dong Lin would save his energy and give Du Yuntian a surprise during the holy meet the next day. Unable to suppress his dissatisfaction and anger, Dong Lin picked a person to duel with. That person he picked was a strong martial artist of level 5 peak who came from the Qingshan prefecture after he was selected by his duke. I am Zhang Ling. May I ask for your name? Zhang Ling was content and free of fear. He leaped into the arena delicately. Dong Lin was arrogant and cold. Cut the crap. I will let you make the first move, come at me. Zhang Ling's face became serious. Aren't you a bit too arrogant? The Qingshan prefecture was vast and boundless. For Zhang Lin to be chosen from the millions of geniuses, how strong was he? However, when he came to the royal family's dragons meeting, he was actually treated with disdain. Dong Lin stood still for some time, with a cold and arrogant expression. He paid no attention to Zhang Ling, as though he had not realized Zhang Ling's existence. You look down on me too much. Zhang Ling launched an attack furiously. City demolishing raging flame. Zhang Ling emitted a vital energy which surrounded his body, as though it was a layer of raging flames burning vigorously. Waves of flames started to disperse in all directions. The spectators at the grandstand could feel the flames heat from their seats. What an amazing cultivation technique. It should be a top medium level cultivation technique that has achieved stage 2 top class. Only a step away from stage 3, the highest stage of the cultivation technique. The raging flames wrapped around his body, with a heat so strong that they could burn through heaven. A very strong power could be felt in all directions. With a raging flame that could demolish a city, Zhang Ling headed towards Dong Lin. Covered in majestic flames, it was as though Zhang Ling wanted to burn Dong Lin to ashes. However, Dong Lin stood absolutely still, with his eyes unchanged, and still paid no attention to him. Nothing special. Dong Ling raised his hands and swung them violently. The raging flames surrounding Zhang Ling were fully extinguished with one swing. The fierce city-demolishing raging flame was easily pulverized by Dong Lin. Zhang Ling's expression changed abruptly. His strongest attack was actually pulverized so easily. Dong Lin was absolutely still. His eyes were shining brilliantly and were full of coldness at the same time. I have allowed you to make your move. It is now my turn. Hibernation destroying finger. Dong Lin stretched out his index finger abruptly. It was as if the sun had just risen from the east, and as if the world had become one with it. Layers and layers of raging flames covered his finger. The finger had a powerful vibe that shook the air, and fragmentary shadows of the flames piled up layer upon layer. Zhang Ling's expression turned pale as he was gradually filled with fear. City demolishing raging flame. In the dangerous situation, Zhang Ling used his unique skill again. Zhang Ling gave a horrible shriek and was sent flying for 20 meters, causing him to fall below the arena and spit out a mouthful of blood. Medium-level cultivation technique at stage 3 top class. Su Yu's pupils shrunk. The first prince's expression turned grave. Dong Lin had actually honed his medium cultivation technique to stage 3 top class. Only Du Yuntian paid no attention to it and he commented coldly. Zhongling has very strong fundamentals, with very thick vital energy and powerful cultivation techniques. As for cons, his execution of techniques is not smooth, and he has slow reaction time and weak willpower. Hence, he has a lot of weak points. Dong Lin has a very high cultivation base. His cultivation technique is at stage 3 top class and he executes it smoothly. As for cons, he is weak at controlling his vital energy, causing him to waste much of it. If he continues to fight for a prolonged period of time, he will be at a disadvantage. Du Yunqian's words had hit the mark, dealing psychological damage to Zhongling as a result. As for Dong Lin, his eyes were cold. Humph. Did I ask for your comment? As he glanced at the remaining 13 geniuses, Dong Lin retired from the arena. I will excuse myself as well. The rest of you are too weak and are of no interest to me. The remaining 13 geniuses' faces were burning with anger. In their prefectures, they were considered geniuses that could only be found once in 100 years. However, at the arena, they were continuously treated with disdain. They were extremely disappointed. However, upon witnessing Zhongling's sorry state, they knew that they were below Du Yuntian and Dong Lin and could only contain the dissatisfaction within their hearts. After the two of them retired from the arena, there was an awkward silence. The first prince looked around and laughed. Zhonli, haven't you been yearning for a match with the Duke of Xianyu's son? Law. Why not have a match against him now? The audience looked towards Zhonli. He was a genius at level 5 peak, and his abilities were about the same as Zhongling's. A few people felt strange. Zhonli was a genius recommended by the second prince, however, the second prince was killed by Su Yu. Zhonli was 17 years old. He was thin and small, with a rough face and a violent personality. There was a cruel and ruthless vibe surrounding his body. He looked at Su Yu coldly, causing him to feel that he was being watched by a wild beast. Su Yu. Zhonli bit his teeth and blurted out Su Yu's name. His voice was full of hatred. Zhonli took big steps and went up to the arena. He looked down from the arena and pointed his fingers at Su Yu's nose. Get down now. Originally, he should have been enjoying untold wealth and high honor while he was at the second prince's service. That would have allowed him to soar to the top with a flap of his wings, causing him to be standing above millions of people. However, the death of the second prince had caused the future that he had foreseen to be completely destroyed. Among the spectators, he was known to have almost as much hatred towards Su Yu as the first prince. I will grant you your wish. Su Yu leapt onto the arena and confronted him coldly. Zhonli was full of hatred and he launched an attack angrily. Iron Horse Kick. It was a medium-level cultivation technique that was at stage 3 lower class. He raised his leg and as if there were thousands of men riding horses, the dust lifted off the ground continuously. The spectators' inner strength was boiling with excitement, their hearts beating violently, as they could feel the strong pressure in the arena. As Zhonli came closer, Su Yu felt even more pressure. Zhongling, who was beneath the arena, had a fearful expression, but he was amazed. As expected of the genius recommended by the second prince. He actually managed to comprehend his medium-level cultivation technique to stage 3 lower class. When he put himself in Su Yu's shoes, he was filled with cold sweat and his air of arrogance was greatly reduced in an instant. He found out that if his opponent were Zhonli, he would not be able to last against more than 10 moves of his. It was difficult to comprehend a medium-level cultivation technique. However, the increase in power between every class was huge. At the Qingshan prefecture, Zhongling treated other geniuses with disdain. However, at the dragon's meeting, he felt that he was inferior to many others. At the holy meet, the number of demon students was comparable to the number of clouds. Among the demon students, he was considered below average. Zhonli took vigorous strides. His leg technique was like millions of horses galloping, causing the spectators to shake with fear. There was a red light surrounding his leg. As he galloped, his legs were like a big volcano ready to erupt. In primeval state, Zhonli violently threw himself at Su Yu. Kneel down now. Zhonli's big strides were like thunderbolts. He aimed for Su Yu's chest. The wind blew away the black hair in front of Su Yu's forehead. The sand covered Su Yu's icy cold eyes. Su Yu started to move.